wop wah. How are you? How is everyone? Is doing good? Is doing fantastic? You better, because we're back with coffee and chat, and everything is out of whack because all the systems are out of whack. And here's me, me.
Here's me. I'm with Lev
You are. It's been a while. Well, actually,
instead
last
of
time.
Shab.
Who needs Shab? Let's replace one addiction with another. Oh, although actually in this case I'm not drinking. I am drinking. I'm just drinking coffee. But you can be addicted to coffee.
Yeah, I'm addicted to caffeine.
Hell
Who
yeah.
isn't?
How many cups do you have per day, would you say?
Well, I usually have take caffeine pills,
Oh.
and I also drink coffee.
You do both? Jesus.
Yeah, and Red Bull.
Well,
Probably have a couple thousand milligrams of caffeine a day.
That's kind of terrifying. I'm hardly one living the most healthiest of lives, but part of me's now thinking, I wonder when he's going to grab his heart and topple over at like 36. That's
Who, me?
Yeah.
Well, you just gotta, when you feel your heart pumping, you just gotta run it off. You go on the treadmill, you gotta burn off the excess energy.
Well, you're also then
burning
off the excess sugar as well. Like you can at least drop the Red Bull, right?
Well, I usually don't eat much processed food, so all the sugar, I get the sugar-free Red Bull, which is artificial sweeteners. So besides the stevia that I put in the coffee and the artificial sweeteners from the one Red Bull before I exercise, that's about it.
Oh, just one. Okay, fair enough. For some reason I was expecting you downing a 6-pack a day or something.
I usually do a B complex shot, and then I have this electrolyte powder that I put in my water. It's got potassium and sodium and stuff, and then I drink a Red Bull whenever I get on the treadmill.
Fair enough. I've been lax on doing the treadmill, which is very stupid of me, because next week I'm off on my hike stream up to Mount Chimor, and well, it's not Mount, it's a hillock. It's between a hill and a hillock. So it's going to have, and I'm going to live stream the whole thing, and I've been completely lax on my treadmill for ages. So I've only got myself to blame when I'm bathed in sweat after 5 seconds. I'm just going to do some basic shilling, and then we can get into it. But first, quick disclaimer. If you don't know what Coffee and Chat is, that's fair. It's been a while since I did it. I think this is the first I've done it this year, unless the one with Red Eye was this year. But the basic premise is just, I have a guest on, and we talk about whatever. We usually just talk. We sometimes watch stuff, but we usually just talk. We go where the conversations go. Now, number one, Gene was saying that I sound a little off. So if you guys are picking up anything different, then just say so in the comments, and I'll try to work around it. No promises. Second of all, we have ourselves a pretty crazy looking motherfucking stream goal up there. That's because I have vowed before the end of the year to buy the vast, if not all, of the Final Fantasy games to play. It is a uphill struggle that you will completely finance for me. I will not pay a penny of my own cash. Rather, every time we get enough money, I will buy off one of the Final Fantasy games that I don't have. I have 7, which is well known by now. I've been playing it nearly every week. 8 and 9, plus I have 15. Never did finish 15. We have to get back onto it. Now the computer's been upgraded. So starting from next week, I'll be playing a Final Fantasy game per gaming stream. Numerous ones. So, but if you guys want to see that, hell yeah, throw some dinero that way. Plus, I have counted in for Krendar's bit. And yes, it is roughly about that much. It's fucking insane. Now, on top of that, this Thursday, John will be joining us for Bearded Ramblings. But also... More Gene.
What everyone wants.
Welcome to the Gene Energy video channel.
I'm full of energy.
Apparently you bloody well are. I could power a small city block with your blood.
Yeah.
But besides that, we have on Thursday, immediately after BR, if you are a subscriber over on Twitch, you will be able to join us over on Discord right after BR for movie night, where we will be watching a special movie, I won't say which, and
Caligula?
No, I've already seen Caligula. The steam powered dildo scene is, I don't think, very historically accurate. But the
I don't expect movies to be historically accurate.
That was a joke. Try to keep up.
I know.
But on top of that, all you have to do then is just become a subscriber. Because we're also watching a movie, but I won't say which. Wait, no, I already said that part. Dragon Ball. We're watching the original Dragon Ball show. The original one that has all the problematic scenes involving kids and explosions and death and swears and all the lovely, jubbly fan service. So, if that intrigues you, become a subscriber over on Twitch.
I'm a big fan of Dragon Ball.
Any of them?
Even when I was a kid and I watched it on Toonami, I'm like, I don't get why people watch this.
It is kind of hard to pin down. I will give you that, because at first glance you're like, oh boy, it's an anime about all these basically superheroes beating the living shit out of each other. But then they just end up talking for hours and hours and hours
exactly.
and hours.
It's not really good writing.
Yes, Billy Boy Blue. There are many panty shots in the original Dragon Ball. Normally in very problematic ways. Of course, even
a lot of anime like that's for kids will have a lot of really like risque stuff in it. Even like Western animation, like a lot of those Cartoon Network cartoons, they had, like, going back and watching them, they had like blood and everything. And what is it, like Dexter and like Powerpuff Girls?
Dexter had blood. Powerpuff Girls fucking mutilated people. Like, they'd be left as like this like mush on the ground, and it was played up for laughs. You had him, who was clearly queer coded. You had even Fuzzy Lumpkins. Like, people were complaining about him back then because he was an insult to like Southern people. Well, yeah, he's meant to be a hillbilly. But there, yeah, like, you could say, oh, it was the standards of the time. Yeah, but there were moments, like a lot of Dexter's Laboratory was very thirsty, very sexy at times, like sex focused.
The Dial M for Monkey.
Oh, the famous scene where well, there was a few scenes that could have got in trouble. One, the commander was drunk at one point, which older cartoons you'd be able to get away with, but they weren't quite able to show it. And then, yeah, his Monkey's relationship with the super spy lady and the skin tight bodysuit.
Agent Honeydew.
God damn that name. But and I remember her. She was fucking thick. So was the mom as well. That's a porn category all of itself. Dexter's mom porn cosplay. But there was like a lot of really risque stuff even then. But it wasn't just I can never pronounce his name. Tarkovsky, the guy who did that, Powerpuff Girls, Samurai Jack, which you can tell
Roman, or no?
No. The Primal, that was a great show. Yeah, Samurai
Yeah.
Jack, Samurai Jack creator. I can never pronounce his second name.
I was about to say Roman Polanski. I'm like, no, that's the
No,
pianist guy.
that's someone else
Chinatown.
entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's what you know him for. Okay, that's like saying, "Wow, it's Woody Allen, famous director." I mean, technically you are, but you've also done other things too, buddy.
And
Um,
separate the art from the artist.
oh, I can do that easily. I still think that if I ever ran a film school, it'd be required viewing to watch Kevin Spacey. He's very good at what he does. He's also very bad of some of the things that he did. So, um,
Now, what do you think of all the like Hogwarts like controversy or Harry Potter?
Um, same as before. If you can get joy, I loved the books when I was a kid. A lot of people turned on J.K. and said that she's a terrible writer. She's not the greatest writer in the world, but for young adult stuff, yeah, it was great. Too bad she's a fucking turf. It fucking
Like, what did
sucks.
she? I haven't really looked into it. Like what did she come out and say?
She's no, it's numerous things that she said. She's also written a book where a serial killer was a trans person that could get away with it legally. She is basically saying that like trans people are a bunch of predators who will go into women's bathrooms legally and molest and sexually assault women. That they'll go on killing sprees because they can't be women. That a lot of cis women have. She's a turf. She's a genuine. She is
Okay.
grand mommy turf. She doesn't hide it. She doesn't like the term because she knows the term is derogatory. But you know what? Good, good.
Now, certain Harry Potter fans, like that I've talked to, they'll claim maybe I should just like research it because
Yeah, it is a
look
big
into it
well. It's a
directly.
big well. Plus, a lot of the actors and actresses from the movies have all cut ties from her. Um, uh, she claims that she's being persecuted while she lives in her fucking castle. You know, like, no, sorry, honey. I think she was. I think she had a bad experience. Everyone's theory is that she's had a bad experience once, maybe when she was like in her early 20s or whatever, and with a trans person. Maybe she dated a guy who wanted to go with a trans woman. Maybe they became trans or came out as trans. Maybe all this other shit. Like, but that's all like mental gymnastics. An excuse is not a justification. She has promoted some fucking vile people, and to the point where she was shocked that Putin gave her a thumbs up in a message once, saying that she was a victim of the
Uh,
woke mob, and J.K. was like, "But you're a Nazi. What do you have in common with me?" Gee, JK, I don't know. But getting solely on her work is derivative. It can be bland at times, but my God, I could see why it was. I was a part of it. I was right there with in the mob on the first generation. I remember when the books first hit the shelves, the
yeah.
Philosopher's
Well,
Stones. Like, it was just it was. I didn't like the last book. The last book kind of dragged a bit, but
with the Deadly Hollows.
yeah, it didn't need to be that big, honestly. It didn't. I didn't care about a lot of the characters. They didn't seem to be the same people, even at their core. I knew they grew up. They had to have changed, but it was like they were just all pissy all the time. Everyone was pissy, and it was like all this focus on the Death Eaters' internal squabbles. Like show that like book three, like the Goblet of Fire or
Hmm.
something. Don't. As for the movies, they were even worse. Like, they were just cash grabs. But you
Well,
know,
one of the things, like I didn't really like. I was turned away from the series because of how like I know I sound like a contrarian, but I didn't like how everyone else was so obsessed with it. But the thing, like, usually I'm not like that with franchises, but the thing that kind of made me kind of turn me off with Harry Potter is there are a lot of people that like all they would read was Harry Potter, and it's like I grew up in like a middle class, upper middle class kind of suburban community. So you had a bunch of kids where they would like read their Harry Potter book or their like Twilight Hunger Games book every once in a while. and they're like, oh, I love books and everything, and they want to like give off this veneer of like being an avid reader. And then if you tried to talk to them about something that wasn't Harry Potter, they couldn't have a discussion about like any books that they read. And then it's things like they'd go to the movies and they couldn't really wrap their head around why films like Transformers or like Grown Ups 2 aren't really well received. And then if you watch a film that's like a drama, they get bored and everything. And it's like, I don't think you really like reading as much as you claim when you don't have the attention span
Well,
to
no,
watch a.
they clearly like reading. They just like reading certain things. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. Now, if they turn around and say, "Oh, I'm an expert at reading," and you're like, "Oh, well, what do you read?" And then they say, "Oh, 50 Shades of Grey," and you're like, "Well, you're an expert at reading 50 Shades of Grey. Do you read any like non-fiction? Like, you lead with that." But here's the thing: not a lot of people have the time of day to just not read, like to read something more out of curiosity than out of like a genuine passion. If your time's limited, you got to go for that quick fix. And that's why Michael Bay, all the Transformer films, are like trashed for being the trash that they are, but made a fortune. Lindsay Ellis made a great video series on this very topic, and she said it was the Cletus and Ethel syndrome. Cletus and Ethel work for a living. They don't make that much money, and once a week they have a date night. Where do they go? They go and see the film. The first film they see that looks fun. It's a bunch of explosions. It's got nostalgia. It's got girls in skimpy outfits. It's got Americana. It sells like hotcakes. As for Harry Potter, well, I know, like, I'll tell you, dating women in their 30s on, like, Tinder, like, every fourth one will say Hufflepuff and proud, Ravenclaw and proud, and all that. And you know, you just take it with a grain of salt because that was the thing at the time. Um,
Well, I
it,
mean, I don't mind if they enjoy it. Like the thing that I find to be pretentious is when they want to act like they love literature over film, and they'll say things like, "Oh, it's rare that a book is ever as good as the movie," but they rarely ever read. And then, like, you'll talk to them, and they'll be like, I had this one coworker, and she's like, "Oh, Grandma's Boy, that's my favorite movie," and
how old was
they'll
she?
never. She's in her 20s.
Well, hold on. That's just life not catching up yet. Like
I guess. Well,
it's
I'm
a
in my
shit movie,
30s.
but yeah.
Yeah.
And you have had a lot of interest in reading and doing things outside of the zeitgeist. But by the way, what's your favorite film?
I don't know if I could pick just one movie. Like The Shawshank Redemption's up there.
Brilliant,
Um, Lawrence of Arabia, like
brilliant,
Doctor Zhivago were up there.
interesting
Barry
choice, Doctor
Lyndon.
Zavago.
What's
Never.
that?
Interesting choice, Doctor Zavago. You don't really hear about it that much. Um,
Yeah.
you've got clearly tastes for like more classic stuff than the stuff these days by the sound of it. But like that's just to quote the dude, and I am in a robe. That's like just your opinion, man. You know, like it's
Well, it's an
uh
opinion, but they'll pretend that they love literature like Pride and Prejudice, like stuff from that genre, but they don't understand why like books like The Great Gatsby are as claimed as they are. So it's like you look at the kind of literature they'll put on a pedestal and they won't dare say anything negative about any sort of book, and it's almost like they know that you're told that you're supposed to read when you're a kid, but they don't know why you're told that you're supposed to read. And then it's just you look at their choice in film compared to their choice in literature, and it doesn't really add up. And they can never have a discussion about like these kind of generic great works of fiction that they claim to respect. But then, like, they can talk about Harry Potter. Once again, there's nothing wrong with liking Harry Potter. But then, when it comes to movies, they'll like shit on movies, but then they clearly watch a lot more TV and film than they do like in regards to how much they read.
Well, yeah.
So
I mean, hold on. That's
there's
kind
this
of
dishonesty there.
there is indeed a I think there's a disconnect on their part. I actually have no comparison for this. That's not the circles I hang out with. They would that would kind of annoy me, but I just feel more like being left out myself. Like I seriously thought of getting back into wrestling just because the drunken peasants community won't shut the fuck up about wrestling, and I felt left out. And I was like,
I could never get into wrestling.
when I was young, and when I was really young, like 5 or 6, I loved wrestling. And when I was like in my mid-teens, I got briefly got back during the Attitude Era and shit. And now I'm thinking if I got into it again, there would be a learning curve, but I'd catch up and be like, oh yeah, such and such is my favorite guy, or of course I watched WrestleMania. But like I didn't gut follow through with it because I didn't feel the peer pressure, because no one was peer pressuring me, but I did feel left out. And I do feel left out when I hear people talking about like, oh, the big movie out this year. So I go and watch it. But because these days around where I live, the big movie can be anything. Like it could be The Whale, or
Oh, the whale is really good.
there was one I watched fairly recently that I thought was great. All Quiet on the Western Front, which
Yeah,
yeah, that was a good film.
we watched. Yeah, I had Shab watch that one.
The D&D movie, like it comes in all shapes and sizes, and I'm okay with it because I've got range. Other people, you got to remember, other people might not have the range that you do. And they might look at something and go, "Nah, my roommate's like that. He knows what he likes,
Well,
and he knows what he doesn't
I
like."
don't mind whether people personally enjoy it or not. Um, but when it comes to that kind of culture, like the thing is, when it comes to books versus movies, I think that uh, there is a lot that film has to offer that you don't really get in literature, and vice versa. So
Hmm.
there are certain strengths to telling a story like via film, and even before film, like when it came to stage and theater. I think like when it comes to drama, there's a lot that actors can bring to a story emotionally, and I think it's a case by case. Sometimes the film adaptations can
Are
be better than the books, but then you have people that you talk to and they can't really explain in any detail why. It's just when you're younger, you're taught that reading rots your brain, reading or watching TV rots your brain, and reading's good. And they don't know why. They know what to think, they don't know how to think. So they'll pretend that they love books just to act like smart, but then they can't discuss anything in depth. And I had more respect for people who just acknowledge that they don't read, and and then once more, they clearly watch a lot of TV and watch a lot of movies because they can have a discussion about like different films and stuff that they watch. But then when it comes to literature, they can't have a discussion about it at all. They can't, like, you'll talk about Stephen King and they can't talk about any of his books in detail, and then they can talk about the movies in detail. And they clearly haven't read the books because they won't know what all the differences are between the books and the movies. And it's just I find that kind of culture is toxic. Of let's put books on this golden diamond plated pedestal and then pretend that we love it more than all other forms of media and narrative, even though we really don't. And it's just they don't know, like it's a problem of like knowing what to think and not knowing how to think.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can see where you're coming from here. I just think that like the problem there is just that like if you don't like their hypocrisy, which is fair, I would make a mental note of that too. I'd be like, hold on, what the fuck? I would just then say find a different class of person to hang out with because you're not gelling as well as
Yeah.
you could. Leave them to
Well,
their own devices and
these are like my cousins.
well, even still, like you're not
Yeah.
bound at the hip, unless you're in the deep south and it's we don't talk about what's going on down down there. But like I don't have this issue. Like when I take Elf King, right? I don't know if you've been introduced to them or not, but they're like one of my best friends, have been for decades. And I've watched them go through so many different likes of interests over the years. very few of them I have genuine interest to, so I can't really gel with them. A lot of it has to do with anime. They're big into anime. Me, I like what I like. I sometimes watch a little bit of A, a little bit of B. Like I said, we're gonna watch old Dragon Ball, more for nostalgia, if anything. But I then go and they go on this diatribe of why this character is good, this character is bad, and I have no frankly interest at times, but I do get what they're saying on more like character model based. So I can keep up to a degree. But honestly, if I don't have an interest in it, they pick up pretty quickly and they change the topic. Um, as for people who idolize books and idolize whatever, also like these people you saying are in their 20s, young, I'm guessing early 20s.
Yeah, 20s, 30s.
There's a good chance that'll change and shift. Like, especially the younger they are, like their interests will shift and change. Maybe, for example, they'll go back and read a book that they didn't read for years and realize that, oh, I get this a little better now, and maybe I can have a different conversation that could lead to different things, or maybe they won't, but I don't
Well,
know.
apparently, like once people hit the age of 25, um, their like personality is pretty solidified at that point. So apparently, it's very difficult to change your personality after the age of 25.
Oh, sure. Personality wise, I'm roughly about the same I was 10 years ago. And I'll probably be the same when I'm starting to show some grays. But like, you can still admit when you're wrong. You can still, be like, oh, I should have gotten into this. I avoided the Avatar show, Avatar: The Last Airbender, when it was popular.
I grew up with that. Yeah, that was popular when I was a kid in like elementary school, middle school.
Everyone I knew was into it. I don't know why. I just kept putting it off. I watched it a few years ago. It was fucking brilliant. And I was like,
Actually,
what?
what was weird is, I'm shocked. Like, I go online and it is really, really popular. When I was a kid, I would come across other kids I watched and they're like, oh, I like that show. But for the most part, most kids I talked to, I guess it was just my area. Like, they didn't like watch it at all. I was kind of shocked at how well the show was doing when I looked into like how like just its views and everything abroad. But
Oh, it was a smash hit, and it was an
yeah,
inspiration for a lot of. We wouldn't have had Adventure Time or a lot of the other shows that came out of it, including all these Netflix shows now like Castlevania,
yeah,
Arcanum.
that Castlevania show. I've never played the games, but that was really good. And Sypha, the like magic,
Yeah,
she's the speaker. That reminded me of Avatar, how she used the magic and everything.
very creative with it. I like a lot of those shows, and you can trace its ancestry back to Avatar, and it was great at the time, but for whatever reason, I just was not interested in watching it, and I regret not doing it. And I hope it wasn't just because it was popular, because that means like right now I am thinking like, because something can be really popular and good. There doesn't seem to be always a correlation. Like, take the what's that terrible sitcom that it keeps like living. It doesn't deserve to die. Big Bang Theory. Like, it just keeps on living
Oh.
over and over again, and they make
I
spin-offs.
just don't watch sitcoms, so like I
Sit-
don't.
Sitcoms have their place. I mean, I'm a big fan of
Yeah.
Frasier. But I know they're bringing it back. I'm terrified to see what they're going to be doing with it. But like, it was so unfunny to me. But then I looked around and people loved it. Absolutely, it was that How I Met Your Mother. But then I'd look
I
at
do think most things that are popular, I do find are usually like they're not bad. I mean, they might not be the best thing around, but I think like the Marvel movies, like for the most part, I enjoyed pretty much all of them. And I think I haven't watched a lot of the later ones past like the what was it, the third wave. But I like the Loki show.
Loki was good.
The and I thought they got better with each like
The
wave because
body
the
is well.
Oh,
first wave of
sorry,
Marvel
sorry to interrupt.
movies.
Sorry to interrupt. We just got a dono.
Hey Lev.
Uh,
Love when you stream. Do your thing, brother. Side note.
what does it
Has
say?
anyone ever told you that you kinda look like Heihachi Mishima?
Hey Lev, Billy Boy topped up $10, which means we can now get Final Fantasy 13. I'll do that right after the show. Do your thing, brother. Side note: has anyone told you that you kind of look like a Shachi? Is that the motherfucker from Tekken?
Which character?
Uh, 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 the character with the gray spikes hair, and he's like the main evil guy in Tekken.
Oh, I've never played Tekken.
Yes, it is. Yeah, I can kind of see it because of the goddamn the headphones, the way they are. It's kind of giving me a sort of crown. And I've got the mustache. Yeah, fuck. I'm okay with that to a degree, but I didn't put the connection there. But yeah, anyway, I'm sorry. I'm sorry there. I'm sorry there. John. Do go on, please.
What were we discussing? Avatar?
Yeah. Avatar, and then it was the Marvel films.
Oh yeah. Thought the first wave, like the Hulk, I didn't think was really that good, or the
Mm-mm.
first Thor movie, but I did think they got better as they went on. And
What?
like popular media, I think most shows that people like Breaking Bad and stuff, like Dexter. It's kind of odd, but like most live action TV series I find that are really popular are usually fairly like highbrow
Yeah, especially
and
if they've got the
complex.
especially if they've got the good writers. Like I'm really big into the
I mean,
Star Wars
Stranger
universe.
Things.
I loved Stranger Things. I never finished the
Yeah.
series, but I got pretty far in. Walking Dead I liked to a point. I thought its problem was the same problem. That came from the source material. A lot of the comics are just people bitching at the worst possible times. And then it cuts to the show, and what do? They bitch. Like Penny Arcade released a comic where they were going like, I've never watched a show, or I've never seen a bit of zombie media where I was rooting for the zombies to eat them. Like they stop whatever they do to have like gender relation arguments. Like, dude, board up the windows. Now's not the time.
Mm.
Priorities. But like, yeah, no, a lot of really good stuff also is like pretty popular. I'm big into the Star Wars shows right now. I was big into the Witcher when it came out. I was big into Game of Thrones. But I don't. I suppose the topic also helps. I never got into The Crown, for example. That was pretty popular for a lot of people. I was never big
I still need
into
to watch that.
Grey's Anatomy. I was never big into, but I was big into House of Cards, all versions of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was again Kevin Spacey. Um, uh,
About Mad Men.
I watched some episodes of Mad Men. I think if I really buckled down and watched it, I would really like it by the end of it. But I didn't like the cults of personality that were spawned from it. Like it became this sort of like, this is how men really should be sort of thing. And I'm like, oh, fuck off with that shit. Um, but
Well,
uh,
a show I want to go back and watch is The Wire. That actually
everyone
takes place in
says,
Baltimore.
everyone says, if you can find the time to watch The Wire, you will not regret watching The Wire. I've heard this for years. Um, I would love to watch The Wire, and I should watch The Wire. And every year, I keep coming up with more excuses not to watch The Wire, which is so
Well,
fucking dumb.
one thing I want to try to do is on Kick. Their copyright protection is pretty much absent, so people will just like watch different shows on there. So I was thinking of doing more movie and TV hangouts on Kick. And then there's another streaming site. It's like it's known as Russia's Facebook called VK, and they also pretty much have no copyright protection at all. So you can just we were watching like Quantum Leap and a
Hmm.
bunch of other like old shows. So I wanted to get Shab to watch Stargate, like the
Oh,
Stargate
yeah.
SG-1 series.
Start with the movie.
Yeah, and I don't know, the movie is kind of
What?
mediocre.
Maybe, but it still gives you the premise of everything you
Yeah.
need. Plus, I liked certain elements of it. I liked the Jaffa were never as menacing as they were, except in the movie. In the movie, they were like all in shadow, and they looked because they only had the helmets. They looked far more like imposing for some reason. Like at first glance, you're like, "What the fuck are those things?" Then they're just people. I
Oh,
love
and
the
they had
show.
the stop motion where the like helmets would go off instead of
Yeah,
CG.
that was a bit of a struggle. Plus the Stargate technology improves way more between even like the first season, like the way that Naquadria is just kind of floating. Naquada, Naquadria was the other stuff. God, I'm a nerd. And the way it kind of shimmers, it kind of reminds me. I just was playing Final Fantasy VII a few like 2 days ago, and we were last night actually, and we just got to where Eris was killed, and once you get to put in the water, the night like the 1990s graphics for the water effects are like so like basic by today's standards, but I remember like people were like, praising it like this is really advanced. Look, you can see her hair move and all that shit. Like it like it was a different
Yeah, Final
time.
Fantasy is another like series I've never invested in. Not because I'm not interested, because it's like there's so many games.
I should know. I've just started on a
Yeah.
journey to buy them all. Uh, by the way, if you're curious, the grand total should come to just under 300 quid, and that's not including the if that's not including Kingdom Hearts, Tactics, Dire of Cerberus, um, uh, oh God, the Kingdom. I already said Kingdom Hearts. Uh, there was an. Oh, I know the ones I have, which is 7, 8, 9, and 15. Plus, I'll now have access to 13, which we'll be starting playing next week. Um, no, it's a time sink for sure, especially as they get more and more advanced. Oh, and I won't be playing any of the multiplayers, the online ones. That's just not appealing
Yeah.
to me.
I did get some of those Dragon Quest games. I still got to get around to playing those.
I
And
know
then,
so little about Dragon Quest except for the porn.
well, I played some. It was probably like the best alternative to Pokemon, like the Dragon Quest monsters.
Hmm.
So I would say like Pokemon when it came to the show and the cards and stuff, they had all the other like competitors, but when the video games, it was always like Dragon Quest monsters. Those were the Game Boy games that people would play, waiting for the next like Pokemon games.
You know what I'm gonna do with your screen? I'm gonna make it the main screen so people can get a better look at you because we're not looking at anything right now. If we end up watching something, I'll go and I'll go and pop you back. There we go. There you go.
They can see my beautiful face.
They can see your hat merge with your green screen.
Yes, I'm missing my cranium.
Oh no! What has Big Brother done to you? They lobotomized him. I missed House. Yeah. I remember House. That was big for a long while. Now no one talks about it.
A bunch of people think that that's like Stalin in the background, and um,
That that makes me sad because that means they don't know the John Hurt movie, and that makes me very sad.
yeah. Well, that's one of my favorite movies.
Hell yeah! I had a chance to meet John Hurt once, and I didn't take it, and I was like, he'll be back. He died the next year. Womp womp
Do you
womp
think
womp.
they should try to make another 1984 film?
If they do, I am so scared because you'd need to get someone who actually knows the source material, not just sort of like, see this? It's just like 1984 as a meme. You know, they need to actually know. For starters, it can't end well. It has to end sad. It has to end broken
Yeah.
and distraught. Like Winston is just like it's Winston, isn't it? The main character.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
He
just ends
goes
up
to the,
the
yeah, he gets tortured.
yeah, the Ministry of Truth. It's right there behind you. Or is it the
Or
Ministry
I
of
think it's
Love?
the Ministry of Love. Yeah, Ministry of Love and Affairs.
Yeah. Like everyone will completely misunderstand this. Even if the movie itself is made great.
Well, the
Look what's happened.
torture was much more like extreme in the book. And that's a good way
Yeah.
to know that people don't read on a regular basis because usually things are more extreme and less censored in the book version compared to the
Mm.
film adaptation. They usually try to make things more PC like in the film version.
Well, also,
Eh,
it would just be hard to make some of the scenes happen, you know?
yeah.
Also, can I just say, Bill Portley in the chat, Jade Cocoon. There's a fucking flashback. I haven't thought of that game in years.
I have the sequel for the PS2 and
Oh,
I
damn.
do have the original Jade Cocoon for the PlayStation.
I remember I got that in a demo disc and I played the hell out of it. And also Monster Rancher, I remember watching the cartoon, but for some reason there was only like 3 episodes of the cartoon. I mean, it was clearly trying
Monster
to
Hunter or Monster
Monster Rancher,
Rancher?
Monster Rancher.
Yeah.
Monster Hunter was I would like to play the Monster Hunter World games. They look kind of cool. Um, the it looks like a sort of time sink because I love the combat in Final Fantasy 15. You all suck. Babylon 5 is the best sci-fi story ever written. This is Red Eye, by the way. Babylon Crusader needs to be made. Second story. Hey, Red Eye, I don't think the greatest sci-fi story ever made. I'm still an old hat who thinks Dune is high up there. But I will say this. Babylon 5 fucking rocks. I loved Babylon
I
5.
started watching it in the first season. I don't know. Like I hope it gets better, but the first season I thought
It does, and then it gets
it
bad because they don't know how to wrap it up after the big event that it's all leading up to. Um,
well the first season I think it's like cornier than like Star Trek and
the
I
tone
don't
is
know.
one of the biggest issues. I know a little bit of
Yeah.
the backstory. They were trying to compete with Star Trek. I don't know if DS9 had just come out yet or not, and they wanted to make a story that was far more like metaphysical and intrinsic about like the future of all living creatures and like themes of civilizations and shit. And then the studio looked at it and went like, "We can't sell toys based off this. You said you were going like you got to dumb it down." So for every like shadow war and meeting literal god, they're going to have other ones that are fucking they're going to have like basic if you hear tuba music, you're in for a bad time. Listen for the tuba music. When that starts playing, you'll be like, "Oh, well, this is gonna make no sense." There's one particular scene when I don't know how to describe it. Ghosts show up, and it's a very poignant scene. And then tuba music starts, and they ruin the whole set.
And then
Um,
there's the
Firefly.
CG hasn't aged well.
No, I think the CG looks really. The character, the ship designs look really cool, but yeah, they had no budget. It looked crap at the time. That's why they made the ships look so alien and different. Because at the very least, and you're like, oh, it looks like it's alien and shit. But then you see the human stuff, and you're like, yeah, we didn't have any budget. Like, um, Firefly was super stored. Firefly was
Yeah.
great. The fans can be obnoxious as fuck, but I will say, without it, we would have never had the Outer Worlds, which I do love the setting of the Outer Worlds. I don't know if I love the game itself. I like the game. I played it complete. I played it to completion. But the idea is great. A sort of cowboy western, Cowboy Bebop, same premise, you know. Or Trigun to a degree, or Outlaw Star. A lot of shows a lot of anime took inspiration from that. We need another cowboy western, like
Yeah.
yeah,
Wild Wild West
that Wild Wild West in
was really bad.
space. Wild Wild West 2 needs to have like durables floating in steampunk durables floating in space. And I watch Space Truckers, okay? They can make that shit happen.
But I'd say some of like if I was gonna vote for like the best sci-fi story, probably like the Foundation series.
Mm.
And then like Brave New World. I'd say that's up there.
Eh, that's not bad. I do love. It's never had a bad adaptation in my mind. Brave New World.
And then
Um,
was it Forever War? Have you ever read that?
ooh, I remember reading the premise of it once. Is that the one where, like, at the end of it, humanity is launching billions of soldiers at an alien race that doesn't give a fuck about it? Or is that the one where that's like people go through time?
Kind of. They go through like these collapsed stars or whatever to travel through space, and when they travel through space to go to war with the enemy, like centuries will go by.
Hmm.
Sometimes decades will go by. So they keep going back and forth, like to fight in the battles, and then they go back home, and then things will change. Like hundreds of years have gone by, all their relatives are dead. They have to constantly adjust to changes in culture and so forth. And the first time they leave, it's just a few decades in the future, and they come home, and like the relatives that they knew that are close to them in age are like in their like 80s at that point and everything. They've all so pretty poignant when they watch I guess human civilization on like fast forward, and how humanity doesn't really seem to learn its lesson. And in the end, it turns out that there was a truce, a treaty between the humans and the alien race, and it turns out the war is just one big boondoggle. So they kind of went through all of that for nothing. But the two main protagonists, at least they found each other. They had each other through all their experience.
Um, you ever read the Uplift War?
The Elephant War.
The Elephant War. There is a Sorry, I'm eating. There is a book series about during World War II. A bunch of aliens that were like giant elephant people show up, and they start attacking both sides. But that's not what I was
Mm,
saying. Um, the Uplift War.
yep.
Um,
Nah.
no, it was one of the inspirations for Mass Effect. Basically, when humanity meets aliens, they're like generations of like previous like civilizations, and what they do is, ever since the first civilization, they sponsor a primitive civilization, and they guide them over the course of centuries to lift them up into the galactic community. And like the differences between tech is like astronomically huge. But every race has its own agenda, and humanity is backed by like the most diplomatic of peoples. But also, they want to basically force our culture to become like theirs. But we do it. We're allowed to do it to other races, so we start doing it to chimps. And chimps
Mm.
become like a faction in this as well. Um, and it's all like cold wars and border disputes, and it's all regulated by what's equivalent to Wikipedia. Wikipedia is its own
Sounds
faction, and it's very 70s. It's very cool.
sounds somewhat similar to 2001: A Space Odyssey,
Yeah, it
where
was that was one of the inspirations of that.
yeah,
Um,
they lift the chimps, and they lead us forward to where we can use tools
did you
and
ever
kill the
read
chimps that
uh,
don't use tools.
did you ever read the book?
Yeah, the
I
book
like.
explains it a lot better.
Yeah.
You know what the giant fetus creature is in space. They now made us gods.
Um, I never read the sequels, but I did watch the sequels, and I always thought that but after reading the book and after watching the movie, I'm like, are they going to address the fact that when he shows up as the fetus, we launch all our nukes at him and he just bats them away like they're nothing? Are they going to address the fact that he is now our overlord? Like he is our doom god looming over everything. No, no, they
It's
just kind of throw.
visual. You get to see it's more open ended that way.
Yeah, but then they just repeat the process of the second of the movie in the second film. Like it's just, in all fairness, the second film could have existed. It would have been cool to see a sequel in that sort of set of universe. Ooh, what about Ender's Game? What's your stance on Ender's Game?
I've never read it.
Watch the movie.
Nah.
Um, a lot of references towards Hitler in it, and a lot of child violence, very similar to EVA. Like a lot
Like
of
Hunger Games.
yeah, but imagine if instead of panning away, you'd see like people like a child bludgeoning another child to death, and then being praised for
Oh, that
it.
sounds fun.
Yeah, it is addressed as being like, okay, that's bad, but it's in a system that actually kind of praises it because we're fighting a war against giant space ants, basically, and we're losing
So like Starship Troopers.
a little bit. And my
Oh, the
God, I
book Starship Troopers. That's a good example of like a film
but
that doesn't really mirror the book at all, and the book's really good, and the book's really dark.
oh
So
yeah, for starters, both versions of the Federation are overtly fascist. Paul Verhoeven wanted it to be more like upbeat because he remembers growing up under Nazi tyranny, but it was still the same. Like, plus they wanted it to look more sleek and cool and RoboCopy. But in the book, like it's this like everything is so regimented they can't even see it anymore. And they're losing too. That's another factor. Like they just
yeah. Well,
everything they just keep dying.
they do a good job addressing like all the themes of like the military industrial complex and like just all the like boondoggles of war.
Mm.
So
The
that's also
Clandathu drop is one of the best things ever in both versions. But you know, Paul Verhoeven makes it 10 times better because he loves all his gore and craziness. So it's a mean world, it's a bug world, and then the guy gets cut in half. You know, like
and I'd say Jurassic Park. That's another one where the book is
Crichton. Yeah, Michael Crichton.
pretty, yeah, a lot more serious than the movies and everything. Plus, there's a lot of terminology with paleontology and everything. So when you're reading it, if you have like Kindle, where you can click on the words, see the definitions, it's like I'm very OCD, so it's just as you're reading it, it's like like paleontology term after paleontology term. You have to keep highlighting it and writing the terms down, looking them up.
I read it when I was like 7 or 8. I was probably too young to get everything, but I always remember one scene where it goes into the mind of a velociraptor that's figuring out how to work a door handle. And then in the movie, you see that scene, but they obviously you don't have a narration, so you don't know what's going through the velociraptor's mind when it's going through it. I loved that book, and I loved the Jurassic Park movies, but as I got older, I realized only the first one was good. The rest were just okay to worse to bad to oh my god, is this all I can watch on a flight across the Atlantic? You know, like,
I've only watched the first one, and I liked it. All the sequels I never watched because everyone says they're bad.
um, there's varying degrees of bad. The second one I can't say is nightmarishly bad. The third one, I watched the third one in the theaters when it came out, and that was trash. And then a lot of the sequels are just trash. Like Chris Pratt, he's got his role, he's got his place, and I'm okay with a lot of what he does. I'm not okay with others, but then he's just there for brand recognition, right? Like when they bring Jeff Goldblum back, he usually has no impact on the plot. He's just there to be life.
I'm Jeff Goldblum. I'm the
Yeah,
guy in the first movie.
life finds a way. You know, like um.
Yeah, he was really good in The Fly.
Oh, he was great in The Fly. I
Yeah,
also
I'd say that's one of my favorite horror movies.
Brundlefly. I'm not actually. You know what? This is gonna get a lot of people in the chat angry at me, but I mean, if you've watched me enough, you know. Horror and me don't really mix. They don't. It doesn't do the job of making me feel scared. It's very rare that I
Yeah, I
actually
don't really
feel
like horror
scared.
either.
There's a few that stand out that do make me uneasy. The first time I watched The Ring, how they used the flickering when she'd go around the room, That was off-putting because I was in a theater and she just like loomed over me. I was like, "Whoa, the fuck!" But then, but that was more shock value. The Conjuring, though, that was a surprisingly good film at making me feel uneasy. There were scenes in that film that like they're just limited. They don't play up much. But then you're like, wait, no, I didn't just see that, did I?
Well, usually when I like horror films, it's because of elements that aren't really horror. So like The Fly and Invasion of the Body Snatchers in the 70s,
Mm.
those I kind of like for the sci-fi elements. And I also like for like some of the special effects and so forth. The Ring, I like the two Ring films because I like the relationship between the mother and the son. Like that's what kind of made them entertaining. And then The Descent, like
Oh yeah.
that's a modern horror film that I think is really good. That would probably be my top five. And I kind of like the drama in that movie
Um.
between like Juno and the main character, and then
Uh.
the ending they changed it for the U.S. release. So the your like the UK release and everything that was a lot better. The original ending, like, do you mind if I spoil it, or
Actually,
I guess you've
yeah,
already
because
seen it.
because
Yeah.
I haven't seen it, believe it or not.
Well, make sure you watch the original unedited European version because the ending is definitely far more superior.
I just want to say to Billy Boy in the chat, I was about to bring up before we moved off from him, Earth Girls Are Easy, about Jeff Goldblum. That film is so fucking weird. I don't think they could make that today. It's almost like if they tried to make it today, it would be like a new version of like the American Pie films. You know, it just wouldn't land the same way. Um,
Well, speaking of like sci-fi and Final Fantasy,
mm,
one of my favorite video games, and it's so overlooked, probably one of the most underrated games of all time. It's for the DS, and I got it when I was like in middle school. It's called Infinite Space, and I'm not that into like JRPGs, but this actually had a very, very complex story. I'd say it's probably the best story told in like any video game I've ever played. And there's a lot of text. Maybe that has to do with it. But yeah, there's a lot of decent character development in the game, and it's kind of like a variation of like Mass Effect in a way. You
mm.
have your starship, you get to customize the starship. It has this kind of interesting, kind of semi real time, semi turn based kind of starship kind of battle system. And all of the
Wait,
events in the
Endless
game,
Space, right?
infinite space.
Oh, okay. Because I was like, wait, Endless Space is a 4X game. But yeah, no. I've never actually heard of it.
Yeah, well, there's two parts of the game. Part one, you're like a teen, and then the second part of the game, shit hits the fan, and it really changes in tone. And then the main character gets locked up in some prison for 10 years, and then all the characters are aged 10 years later. And yeah, and a lot of these the game's pretty long and everything, but it's one of the most dramatic games I've ever played.
Games have a much better job of freaking me out. Did you ever play System Shock 2?
Yeah. What about wasn't BioShock
Bioshock,
inspired by that?
all the versions of Bioshock, and Dead Space. Dead Space is also a direct descendant from. Now, Dead Space
I
did
gotta
freak
play the
me
Dead
out.
Space games. I
The
played
first one's a great
or
heart. Go on.
Yeah, I got the first one as a kid for the 360, and like I got it used, and I never actually played through it. So it was one of the few games that I bought and never played. So, but I'm thinking of getting it if it's on Steam. I gotta do more
It's
Let's Play
remastered.
streams.
It's been remastered.
Yeah,
I haven't played the remaster because I watched Girly play it, and everyone in chat herself and me as well as I was watching it. There were certain elements I didn't like that they redid. It looked better, but I don't know. However, and this is important. Dead Space, the first one, generally scared me. The second one is one of the best action games I've ever played as an adult. Now, the mechanics aren't much different, but everything is like so better paced. The setting is great. You go from being on board a ship to being on board a giant satellite, a giant space station full of people, and the outbreak happens there, and shit gets real so fucking fast. And it's so like there are so many little quality of moments, things that like immerse you. Then the third game comes out, and the third game I will not say was shite, but it was not great. It completely missed certain elements. It had this tacked on co-op that would lock you out of certain elements of the game if you tried to play solo, and it had microtransactions in it. It was one of the earliest like really big microtransaction controversies. And yeah, no, fuck that noise. Well, afterwards I was like, wow, what a shitty send off to one of my favorite video game franchises. And now they've
What about
relaunched.
the Alien video games, like Alien Isolation, or the
Uh,
first two?
all right, let me see. Which ones did I play? Like I played Alien Isolation. I wasn't very good at it, so I think that's the main reason why I stopped playing.
I
um,
bought it for like I got a PS4 and I got the Dragon Age game for the
oh yeah.
PS4 and Alien Isolation, and I never played the two. That was right around the time like I started college, and I kind of went through a phase for like 8 years where I just kind of didn't play video games at all.
A lot of people do that. A lot of
Yeah.
even like people, if it's their job, they'll go off playing games. Like right now, I must have hundreds of games, and I'm hardly alone here. Like a lot of people, even watching in the chat right now. Like how many like times do you just pick up the free game from Epic and then never play it? Like it's just sitting there
Yeah.
forever, and you're like, one day, maybe one day I'll tackle it. I've got I've got terabytes and terabytes of games, and I sell them, and I'm still buying more with like these Final Fantasy. All right, now in these cases, I'm kind of nostalgizing, but that's it. I'm going back. I'm not looking for the new fix. I'm going back to the stuff I know I'll appreciate more because I played it. Although in this case, it'll be Final Fantasy 13, which some
Well,
of
I
these.
blame Steam for some of that because Steam, they always have the sales, and it's just if you go in to play your Steam games, it's like, hey, this is only a few bucks, and it's just a couple clicks.
Oh yeah, they make it so convenient. Um,
Yeah, and when it comes to money, like apparently, like people are more likely to spend money if it's digital than like physical cash because you feel less of a physical connection. There's this disinhibition effect.
let's see, one, two, three, 3 to 4 clicks, and then you got your game. And
Yeah.
all that's putting you off is the price tag. And AAA games, the price tag can be fucking huge. It won't be too long before we see the base, no extra standard edition game for something like an Assassin's Creed game coming out to be 100. And people will line up. People will defend it. People will make threats on your life if you talk back against it online. This is what
Which game?
there's games like Assassin's Creed, like the top tier games, the
Oh.
big budget ones when they're released. Like
That's another franchise where I'm interested, but there's so many games, and games take so much more time to get through than like other types of media.
oh yeah, especially if you're trying to stream it like I do. Like I can on
Yeah.
average play like what? Let's say I'm playing Assassin's Creed, right? The game, even like the mid tier games, I'm going through each and every one of them. We're on Assassin's Creed Brotherhood right now, and it's actually quite small game in comparison to some of the other ones. Even the previous one, Assassin's Creed 2. And here's the thing, like it will take me maybe like 50, 60 hours to beat, even if I bum rush it. So I'm coming close to about the halfway point. But I've got to spread that out over weeks, months, because I
And
can't
see,
I can't sit down and just do that all. I'm not the completionist. I'm not doing was it a sub goal or whatever, subathon. I'm not doing a subathon.
like me, because I have like OCD, video games are not good for your time because when I play them, I go into a room, I have to check everything in the room. Then it's like, did I check everything? I don't know if I checked this. And then I go in the next room and it's like, nah, I got to go back to make sure I did everything. And then I go to the next room and I do the same thing. And yeah, probably best if I stay away from a lot of different type of games.
Yeah, like the strategy games that I play, like from Paradox, like Hearts of Iron. I've been playing a lot of Hearts of Iron as of late. Oh, and I've also been getting into Pathfinder, the second Pathfinder game, War of Righteous. That's a great one. Mandalore Gamer made a video on it recently, and I was like, oh, I've got that. I should check it out. And I'm like, oh my god, the character creator alone is brilliant. And you end up owning like a city that you have to look after. Like it's like games like that will just suck up my time because not only will it take forever, but I'll also like want to restart and respec a different character. I do that with Skyrim all the time, Fallout all the time, New Vegas all the time. I don't do it on Dragon Age though. Oddly enough, I don't like if I'm playing Inquisition. I don't feel the need to go back and respec. I have an idea in my head and I stick with it, and then I'm done. Like right now, well, I haven't done it in a few months now, but we were live streaming a female Quinari mage, and just because it's very unusual to what I normally play as. And I liked it because I got a lot of different dialogue choices. You know, people treated me differently. It was a different way of fighting combat, and it was good. It was good. But
You
like,
mentioned having like a city to take care of.
hmm,
That's actually one element I really kind of like in games like Dark Cloud or Fallout 4, where you have settlement building, or
oh,
7 Days to Die. So I think a lot of games need to exploit that more. But also, I think video games usually the stories are bad because they don't have the best character development. I think they need to develop a game where it's like you have probably like one settlement that you build up and stuff, so it's like its own special setting, and it needs to be a very integral part of the story. So like in Fallout 4, where you have various different settlements you can open up, I think one of the problems with Fallout 4 compared to like Fallout 3 New Vegas, where all the different towns and settlements kind of have their own unique kind of flavor, is that it kind of makes things feel a bit too artificial and vanilla. So you need to have your own, just one key location, make it an integral part of the plot, and then with the characters, it's like you really need all the main cast of characters should probably be located in that key location. And one thing is, if you want to develop characters in a game, they kind of need to be part of the gameplay itself. They need to escort you, be part of your party, your little
uh,
fellowship.
John, you do realize you're just describing Red Dead Redemption 2, right?
Um, I haven't played it yet.
Oh, well, there you
Maybe I gotta
go.
play it.
Yeah, you've just described it. Like everyone in the camp that you wander around in is like, and you have to maintain the camp to get all the benefits, but every single one of them has not just a throwaway story. They get involved in your quests, some go, some stay, new ones come in, like, and all the while you're dealing with your own sense of morality and the world around you. It's it's kind of exactly what you responded to. Although there's no true negative if you don't feed into the camp. It will survive, but everyone will be sadder. Like no, everyone will be like on each other's nerves, and you won't get any buffs. You'll even get like a few debuffs. So it like incentivizes you to get to it. But as for Fallout 4, I want to push back that a bit. I think that they could have dropped a lot of the settlement stuff, but kept a few key ones. Like, for example, Sanctuary Hills should have been the only settlement you needed to build for the Minutemen, or anyone for that matter.
Yeah,
You didn't need it. Everything else you could have scoured for resources and brought back. Hell, what they should have done was they should have given you. There's a mod for this. You can get sending out a scavenger party that will go to those settlements, collect the items, and bring them back. So you don't have to go and do that if you don't want to. But then you got Diamond City. Diamond City makes a lot of sense for as a regional hub, but there's no B rate Diamond City. There's no like a smaller place. It's all it's all afterwards. Like you don't need to go. Oh, I take that back. No, Good Neighbor, but Good Neighbor it didn't really come across as like a settlement. It didn't feel like a place where people lived. It's where people worked. Get more creative, like more regional, because it's been 200 years. There's so many marauders
Yeah.
everywhere. There has to be more than just like two or three settlements sticking out of the rubble.
Well, I
Yeah,
am working on a New
I
Vegas mod.
yeah, I remember you saying
Yeah. And
weird.
it just
Yes.
got me thinking, like Fallout 3, like because it takes place in my area, like Maryland, Vegas, or not Vegas, DC.
Mm.
Um, one of the things we were talking about, like, what would you do in a zombie apocalypse or end of the world, like post-apocalyptic kind of scenario? And I mentioned like I would try to set up a settlement near the Library of Congress because I think it's the world's largest library, and you'd have all the information you need. You'd have your internet to
Well, you wouldn't have
like
the
for
internet if
agriculture,
the bombs
yeah, building
fell.
campfires,
Yeah.
medicine, and you need to start like a religion around like I guess trying to maintain knowledge and
So
education and
the
stuff.
Canticle of Libowitzk. You've just quoted another thing. This is the original
Yeah.
inspiration for Fallout, the Canticle of Libowitzk. Um, uh, I love that idea though, because I'm currently reading the feral creature books. Gurley got me on them, and the animals all have their base of operations in the Seattle University, in the campus there. Um, and when you think about it, a campus, depending on how it's laid out, would be a perfect location to set up a survivor group. Because, like you said, it would have all the amenities, but it would have access to like endless amounts of knowledge, but also just have tons of space to grow. Like the actual campus itself would have tons of space for people to set up tents and stuff like that. Um, Compare that to say Rivet City from Fallout 3. Well, Rivet City's design makes no sense. Like it
Yeah.
makes it like it's the most important place in the capital wasteland, and yet they have a single walk bridge that you have to like call for. You never see people going in and out of it. It's always just there. Like, why aren't people up on the decks? That could be where the
Yeah,
poor
plus
people
food
live.
and an agriculture, that seems like an
They
issue they
have
have.
they yeah they have a lab that's growing fresh food, but you never see them cultivating it. That actually no, that's where they should have it. They should have plots up on the decks, and they've just cleared the decks out, and then just like rows of planters with like corn and shit all
Yeah.
coming out of it. That would at least explain where they're because they explain where the water is coming from, which is the old purifier from the aircraft carrier is still kind of operating, and but also a lot of people just don't drink water because, well, the whole premise of the game is, but yeah, like create a world that is built in, like livable. I like going back to Pathfinder. Uh, every single place you go into in Pathfinder feels like a real place full of real people. Just little things like stuff scattered around, barracks, places where they can get something to eat, all that stuff. Like it feels like an actual place. You put that in comparison to say, I don't know, Daggerfall, and it's just a blocky room next to a blocky room next to a blocky room. What is this layout?
Well, that's what I'm like trying to do with my mod. So like the main like faction is Elysium. They have their main headquarters. There's a map marker called Fort Virtue, and that's where they have all this really advanced tech. And the story is that they come from the largest vault ever constructed up in like Nebraska, and that cult, or not cult, but the vault was established for like what I was talking about, like preservation of knowledge and everything. So it just opened up like 50 years before the game, and they send parties out to help rebuild the wasteland. And they weren't involved in the like I know a lot of the vaults. What was it? It was like the Enclave,
The
pretty much.
experiments, yeah.
Yeah, So
But
with
there
this,
was like
like,
17 sample vaults to give the illusion that everything was okay.
yeah, this an old like aristocrat who was like a Bill Gates character from MIT established it behind the scenes because they predicted that they built a supercomputer and the supercomputer predicted that the end of the world was going to happen. So they decided that, hey, we're going to put all these parameters in place in this vault where we take some of the world's leading pundits and take all the technology we can, build this large city underground. They come out, they try to revitalize the wasteland, and in the game, from Fort Virtue, that's their main hub in New Vegas or in the Mojave Wasteland, and from there they send out parties. So it's the EEC, the Elysium Emissary coalition, and they go to the different settlements and try to rebuild them. So you got all the quests and all like Novak, Freeside, Good Springs, where a lot of the ruined buildings, you go and try to collect resources. You reestablish all the new buildings as you complete more quests. The population of all the different towns increases. More caravans and merchants start to come and go from the towns and so forth. And then the NCR doesn't really like it because they start to draw a lot of attention and they don't like the competition and everything. So I've been working on it for a couple years, and it's probably going to take me another year to finish it.
Yeah. Um, I've still got my eyes peeled on the Fallout London and Fallout Miami mods for
Mm.
for Fallout 4, but it looks like the Miami one is not going to be seeing the light of day, which makes me feel very sad. But London is still getting upgraded all the time, so I'm really pumped about that. I'm still pissed about the Frontier, though. 100% pissed about the Frontier. How that fell
Yeah,
apart so quickly. It's actually fascinating. There's a great documentary. I don't know who, some random guy I'd never actually heard before, but he posted out a great documentary of like the history of how the Frontier came to be and all the mistakes that were made and all the praise that can be given. Because there's a lot of innovation. Like they got vehicles to work in it for fuck's sake. But there's like so many references to like Call of Duty. There's that weird stuff with
oh
America.
God.
Yeah, like you have to go through like a training exercise that's a recreation of the boat prep.
You know what that reminds me of? Did you ever hear of like Hunt Down the Freeman
Yeah.
for like God, that was a
I
mess.
Hate Everything was a voice actor in it, and he had to make a statement saying that he
Yeah,
had no idea like it was gonna be that bad.
he said there were alarm bells that went off in his head. It's like, why do they want some white British dude to voice some like Asian American character? Like, um, okay.
Yeah,
And
apparently the head of it was like constantly getting messages from people being like, "So what are we gonna do?" And he's like, "Oh, don't worry about it," and he just vanish. Um, I
and
have to.
it was like they were obsessed with, like you mentioned, like Call of Duty. Like with this project, they were obsessed with the Metal Gear Solid, and they what is it, Iowa? Like the guy, the main creator behind the Metal Gear
Kojima.
series, Kojima. They gave him in the credits like an honorable mention and everything, and they had all these really cheesy cutscenes, and it just
Very
yeah.
few people would get that far because the whole thing would just constantly crash. you know.
Yeah,
Um,
I never played it, but I saw like people doing little mini documentaries on it, and yeah, kind of
the modding
interesting
community.
story.
The modding community is like so crazy. Probably my favorite mods ever are out of Skyrim, but the best ones out of any Elder Scrolls has to be Tamriel Rebuild from Morrowind. They were making Tamriel Rebuilt before the game was finished releasing content. Like as soon as the game was launched, they got the source code from a former dev at Bethesda, and they just went to town. So Morrowind has been in production, and they've done this so much in that. I was going to say in that short time, this incredibly long time because it's been out for decades now, and they're not planning to quit. You'd think that they would with Oblivion and Skyrim, but sometimes they juggle it. I have talked to a few people from beyond Skyrim mod. I'm pumped for that, and Morim or Skyrowind, where they're gonna
Yeah.
be recreating the game using the engine.
Skyrim, I like wanted to make an Avatar: Last Airbender mod, but
I think someone beat you to it.
yeah. Well, I mean, how like is there a large story behind it, or is it
I don't think so. I think they're just perks and
yeah.
perks and like you can I don't know, customize your character. Um, the let's see, some of the ones that stuck out with me. Inigo, he's my favorite. He's my favorite companion in any Elder Scrolls game, which is not really saying that much. They're not famous for their companions, but Inigo is just so well written and so well voice acted.
I
Then
like the what is it? The one mage at the College of Winter, like what is it?
Zargo,
Winterhold? Yeah,
yeah,
he's
he's pretty great.
pretty powerful.
I
He's an
played.
asshole, but a fun
He's
kind of
yeah,
asshole.
he's a quippy one-liner, like "Stick with me, we'll go far." But the oh god, there was one that was a recreation of Lord of the Rings. Like right at the outside of Riften, you meet this ranger, like an actual ranger from like the north, the Dunedain, and she's gone through a portal and she brings you back to the Shire, which has been taken. It's during the events of just after the battle, the Scouring of the Shire, and you have to rebuild the ranger station there. You have to help the hobbits out, and you have to all of this is like you can even fall in love with her if you want. There's all this crazy stuff, and this was all apparently done by like a bunch of teenagers years prior. Um, you got the Beyond Skyrim people. You got the City of Stone people, who after that did so well that they made the City of Gold, which is now an actual game all of its own. It got bought up by some publisher, so they did really well for themselves. There's so many great mods out there, so many great but here's the thing that Patriarch TV says, and it's true. If the game needs all these mods to be great, it wasn't great to begin with. And I love Skyrim to bits, but yeah, there's not a lot going
Well,
on.
you
I'm
can
just
tell that they kind of designed it to be very easy to like mod and
Of
program
course,
for. Like
to fix their own
they,
problems. They've openly admitted that. Yeah, we just let
yeah.
the modding community fixes things within 6 months. We don't have to pay them. You know,
Well, I mean, hey, it works. Like
it should. I know, but that's like, hey, I've got all this heroin around. Suddenly, I'm really popular. You know,
well, it's
like
also they did create like this embedded programming language that's for it's known as Pipers, and
hmm.
it's like very simple, very easy to like anybody could just look up a tutorial and learn how to program with it in this like span
Plus,
of
they give
probably
you
like an hour or
the
two.
creation kit as well. So
Yeah, so the engine they put it out there, so it's like the source engine's also very easy to mod and everything because they also provide like a creation kit and the engine, but you have to learn how to program in C if you want to make more sophisticated mods. And with Gek or with yeah Fallout and Elder Scrolls, they have their own embedded programming language that's very easy for like anybody to learn how to code. It's like easier, I'd say 10 times easier to learn how to program with than Python. And Python's one of the easiest programming languages to learn.
um, Gage, they didn't try. They succeeded. Oh, by the way, the ultimate mod of all time, the Dragonborn Gallery. That is just pure, unadulterated
What
opium.
about the horse defecation mod?
Well, I can number one, I can get that free in Red Dead Redemption 2, and B, hi
Uh,
Vornhelton, I didn't see you there. Um, I've actually
yeah,
used
that's where I've heard of that.
I've downloaded some of his mods for Fallout 4. He makes a house and
Oh
like
boy.
It's just a house. There are other mods stuff too, but
Well, those are very easy mods to
yo,
make.
that's usually
Where
how people start, isn't it? When they start to
yeah,
mod, they make like a dagger or like a suit of armor. Well, the beds he
because in the
made weren't
creation
actually
kits,
terrible. There's some that are okay. They stand out from the rest of the game.
hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
But
there's like a five
one
minute
mod
tutorial, like you can
that's
just do it.
yeah, one mod that's really good is the multiple horses mod. So if you have multiple followers, it's they'll all like they have these trumpets, the horses spawn, very convenient. And the AI is actually decent. Like I thought they really sucked when it came.
Game, kind of like when you were in the carriage in Red Dead 1, and you just like
Mm,
you'd listen to rumors, you'd get like these overhead shots of Skyrim. Sometimes you'd be attacked along the road. And you can skip at any time. You just hit like triangle or something, and it just skips you right to your destination. But that was a nice little touch. Um, also you can get a motorbike, a Dwemer motorbike, now. So yay!
mm,
Buy horse armor. I did not buy horse armor, but I had a complete collection of Skyrim of Oblivion that included the horse armor.
yeah.
As Stephanie Sterling pointed out, that's patient zero. That's where all the microtransaction nightmare can be traced back to.
Yeah,
Uh,
people made a big deal about that when that happened. It was
and
just
rightly
like some
so. They didn't
yeah.
even watch the actual footage if you've like forgotten. They didn't even include new lines of dialogue. They just rehashed old lines that sound like when Chef was brainwashed in South Park, and they just used
Well, in
old
the
audio.
in the convenient horses mod in like Skyrim, the horses automatically have like armor and stuff. And that's a mod and it's free. And it has more to it than just some aesthetic where it's just they have armor and it gives no benefits or anything whatsoever.
I'll tell you, a game that I think has mods, has DLC, all that good stuff, but it's fine on its own is The Witcher 3. I think The Witcher 3 was a
I need to play
really
the
strong game. It will
yeah,
become you'll get sucked in.
yeah, it like people said like the first one like was an open world. It was like linear.
No,
Is that the
it's
case?
pretty linear. But
Yeah.
it's kind of like you go between these biomes that are like these little tiny areas, and interact. It's also they didn't really have the budget in the first game. Only after the success of the first game did they make enough of money to go into The Witcher 2. And The Witcher 2 is a can stand up today. The Witcher 1 can't really. You can play it for if you like the books, you'd be like, "Oh, I remember this. I remember this." But then the third game came along and holy fuck.
Yeah, I have
Like
the book on Kindle. I got to get around to reading it. I wanted to read the book and then watch the show, and then I was planning on playing the games after I finished the two.
most people I know, they played the Witcher games by word of mouth as people learned how good they were. Then they went and read the books, and then the TV show came out. And you can tell, by the way, the TV show is really trying to not parody, but compare itself to the game. Hold on, woo.
Mhm.
Um, Henry Cavill, of course, went off to. He's going to do the Warhammer series now, and I am all for that. I don't know the premise of it yet. I don't know, like, is it going? It's either going to be
Are
Space
they going to
Marines.
have giant hands and giant like feet? Are they going to look like Gears of War characters, but even goofier,
They're
where
going to
their
look
heads
like
are like
Space Marines if they and that means that they're going to look like fucking walking statues. Um,
they need to change that a bit. It's going to look goofy as hell
all
if they
right,
don't like.
so I don't. If they want it look like it does in the lore, I'm for it. However, they need to make Space Marines to be as powerful and borderline like supernatural as they do. Did you ever watch the? It's on YouTube. The series, not series, but this animated short called Astartes. Did you ever watch that?
No.
It is apps. It's all CG. It's absolutely brilliantly made. And there's almost no lines of dialogue. It's got a very obscure in lore setting, but you get to see Space Marines versus regular humans, and the Space Marines move so fast and they shoot so accurately and they're just so OP that they need to show Space Marines like this, but they also shouldn't show them too often. Space Marines are almost like legends for the vast majority of people. We need to see like just regular folk. I think it's actually going to show like an Inquisitor, so that'll be cool. Because the Inquisitors are like the fucking
Yeah.
Inquisitors of the
The
setting.
Horus Heresy,
They
all
won't
died
start with the
off.
Horus. They won't
Yeah.
start off with the Horus Heresy. They might one day do something with the Horus Heresy. An Elf King will
Now,
have
isn't
a
it like it's like as far as I read up from the lore and everything, like this wasn't the only books I read were the Horus Heresy books, but like in the rule books and like what is it, codices,
codexes.
the codex, yeah, they had the lore. So I think the farthest up is like you had like the Tyranid, or not the, yeah, like there's the Tau, and like with the Tau and everything, they went to this planet and they were like pretty much cavemen. They had like Stone Age tools, and they were gonna like colonize the planet. They were gonna like virus bomb and
And then
colonize it, and then
they got distracted because they were having a civil
the warp
war.
storm.
Well, yeah, but that's why no one ever came back. By the time the warp
Yeah,
storm dissipated, they come back, and sure enough, well, they don't come back. They see stuff coming out of it. The fucking Tau, who are now a bunch of blueberry communists.
yeah,
Um,
they found out that they advanced to like really like almost Eldar level tech, and um then like as they were fighting the Tau, I believe they got to their homeworld. So like in the lore, they pretty much like wiped out most of the Tau. They got to their homeworld and
no,
were,
they got into the inner sphere because the Tau had colonized tons of worlds, but they were threatening it.
yeah.
And if the Imperium ever like stopped fighting for like 5 seconds on like some other fronts, they'd be able to overwhelm the Tau really quickly. But also the Tau convert humans now. They call I forget what the term is, but it literally translates as human helper. So
Because there were a lot of units that are other aliens, so they'd actually
yeah, they bring
bring the
in
aliens in.
yeah, they're bringing in
There were
the greater good, the Kroot, the Vespid.
yeah, the Vespids were the ones with the wings, and the crew
That's
had
right.
like no armor. They're like the jungle
Yeah,
creatures.
they eat dead things and they gain their DNA that makes them stronger. The
And then
crew are really interesting. They're all based off one genome, their entire planet, so everything looks like a Kroot.
but I also think as they were, it was something like the Empire were trying to advance towards the Tau, and I think they were actually doing a decent job. But then the Tyranids showed up,
Yeah.
and then the Tyranids are from a completely different like galaxy. So I believe
Yeah,
they,
that's up for the debate.
yeah, they use the warp to travel. So they'll and the warp only extends like to our galaxy, the galaxy that it takes place in. So then the Tyranids somehow are outside the galaxy where they're able to even travel efficiently, like via space travel. And the Tyranids come, and I guess that's where they're at. The Tyranids are invading.
Well, that's still like that. I remember when the Tau were announced because they were sick and tired of people saying that there was no good faction in 40k. Because there isn't a good faction in 40k, including the Tau. Every single faction is
Well, that's
varying
real
degrees of
life. It's
shit.
like,
Yeah,
is the
it's
U.S. the good
grimdark.
guy? Is Russia, China,
Same in
France, Britain?
the
Who's the good guy?
the Warhammer Fantasy setting. Like the High Elves will watch entire cities burn because they misread a communication or something like that. The Slann will
Did they
destroy.
discontinue fantasy?
Yes and no. They created something called the End Times, which did destroy the fantasy world. A lot of the characters from the lore die off. Then Sigmar comes back, and he recreates everything in a new setting called the Age of Sigmar. But people were not happy with that because it fucking sucked. So they're like, well, you know how everything's going to end, but there was tons of other stories we didn't tell you, and now they're fleshing out other places. Plus, the Total Warhammer game came out, and everyone fucking loves the Total Warhammer game. So they're like,
When I
oh shit,
played
there's still money.
when I
Good money
played
to make.
Warhammer, people would always say that fantasy took more skill than 40K, but when I played fantasy, it was much more, I guess, linear when it came to the like design. It was more static, and because of
Well, they were
that,
even in group bases, weren't they? Like instead of individual units, you had like
yeah,
groups of 10 and 20 and like little blocks.
and it was mostly deployment that determined like who would win. So I didn't really think it took more strategy. It was really just a few decisions you made earlier in the game that kind of like determined who would win. Because 40K was more fluid. It seemed like there you could take advantage, like you could go about executing various different types of tactics.
You can move more in 40K. I remember that.
Yeah,
I didn't really play much, but I remember watching tons of other people in Games Workshop play it. And one of the major things that everyone hated was the templates. When you had a flamer, you'd put down like a plastic template and the cone.
yeah.
Everything inside it would take damage. So if you had even like these scrub units, like say, I don't know, orcs, like a regular orc group, and they had flamers, you could do a lot of damage punching up above your weight class. And people would lose their shit. So they were like, alright, you can't use your orc army because it's mostly made up out of flame boys. You know, like, but you know
Well,
what?
people are like, I don't know, like Games Workshop's the last place you should go if you want to play Warhammer. Because, like, from my experience, you would go there and play, and they're so like obnoxious. Like, they would get upset if people use certain strategies. But it's just they're the kind of people where they can only have fun when they're winning.
Well, it's not
And
even that. It's like a lot of times GW gives the stores instructions. For example, was never allowed, no half painted army was ever allowed on the boards. Ever. You had to have them all completely painted. Why? Because then you'd have to buy the Citadel paints, wouldn't you? And you'd have to sit there
yeah,
and paint them. And then while you're there, why don't you pick up a chaplain for your Space Marine squad? He's only 35 quid. You know,
well,
like.
they didn't have that rule. Like you were allowed to like have an unpainted army, like when I was
Ooh.
playing. But here's the thing: there's this one guy I played against, and it's like every store would have like 10 or 20 dudes that kind of were there every day, and then
Mm.
they're buddies with the people that work there. So there's kind of like this cronyism. They let their neckbeard buddies like run games and events, and this one guy I was playing against, he got really mad that he lost. And I guess like I was a kid, I was like 13. Um, so he claimed that the reason he lost is that all of my models were painted the same 3 colors.
What?
Yeah, he claimed that, and it's like, you mean like pretty much every person who plays the
It's
game, like
it's an
you look at the
army.
box art. Yeah,
Yeah.
and he claimed that he wasn't able to differentiate between the different units because they all look the
Well, you
same.
weren't
And
on a
it,
timer. You could have just looked around closer at your models.
well, the thing is, he never brought that up throughout the entire game. It wasn't until he lost where he pulled that out of his ass. And it's like, he was perfectly, and that's what a lot of them would do. They'd be perfectly fine the first half of the game and stuff. But then once it's the last 2 turns of the game and they start to realize that they're most likely not going to win, then
Mm.
they start getting all pissy and stuff. And then they find something to bitch about that they didn't bring up the entire time. And then like the manager there was like an idiot. He could barely speak English. It's like he's not like a foreigner. He's just very inarticulate. But he was like no, like you have to, for now on, all of your units that you deploy have to be like 2 inches apart from each other, or not units. He said the models have to all be an inch apart from one another, and it's like you can't fit them all on the board. He's like, oh well, then you're just gonna have to bring them in like reserves and so forth. And then it says in the rule book that all the different like the models in one unit can't be any more than an inch apart or something like that. So it's like he expects me to actually break the rules to give me this special role because his one buddy is a sore loser. So like that's
Yeah,
how
it's
antisocial they were.
Well, luckily they're not the only game in town anymore. There's like other
Yeah.
hobby stores in Dublin, particularly.
Well, that's what I noticed.
a lot of people who were in my age bracket who was in Games Workshop at the time, they went off to like work in like other hobby shops around Dublin, and they host not just Games Workshop stuff, but now like if you've got any Mech War, a lot of Mech War stuff goes on and BattleTech, and like it's interesting to see just how it's evolved. I mean, the fact that Henry Cavill, fucking Superman's, going to be playing a live action role in a 40K live action show on a mainstream thing, not some mail in, because they tried that in the 90s, and you'd have to like mail in a videotape of like these guys in these giant plastic space marine suits awkwardly pretending to be shooting at demons, in a really bad lit corridor, all next to like or like at a really bad green screen that makes your clipping look professional. you like it's crazy to watch it change and shift over the years. That it's actually like, I wouldn't say mainstream. I think it's too dark. I think it's too complicated to be mainstream. But it's like better than it ever has any almost right to be, and I love it. And I'm just wondering what else is next. Like, will we ever see BattleTech have like a big budget movie? That would be cool. That'd be like
About a Magic the Gathering movie.
Don't they already have like a TV show on like Netflix or something?
I don't know.
I'd have to ask Magicus, I guess.
The story, I actually like decided like, what is the story Magic? And I looked into it, and it's like the planeswalkers in the game. It's like they go to the different planes, all the different realms, and apparently it's like kind of like a Rick and Morty kind of story. There's like an infinite amount of realms, and like all the different realms have their own story, and it's like there's no way to follow it at all. And I think they did that on purpose because they didn't want people to get too invested in the lore. So it seems like it is this kind of existentialist kind of scenario where, yeah, it doesn't matter because there's an infinite amount of realities with all the planewalkers. So because of that, an infinite amount of things are happening with all these different creatures and stuff. So yeah, it's whatever.
Everything, anywhere, all at once, but as a card game.
Yeah, that's kind of the story of Magic, and I was actually surprised. And it's like, I guess that tames my OCD. It's like, yeah, don't think about it. It's just they
repeat to yourself. It's just a show. Merely must relax. Like I love me some lore, but I mean I am a big Star Wars fan, and after a while you just got to take the lore and put it aside and realize that it's not always the only thing.
Oh my God, Star Wars fans, that's probably like the most annoying fan base. Like I like Star Wars. I like the Mandalorian series. I liked the original trilogy. I even like Revenge of the Sith. Lots of people hate that, but that's like the darkest Star Wars film.
Not in my neck of the woods, because it gave birth to a lot of like the politics and the backstory, and you got to see the plans in motion that he's been working for years. Like I like it now. I didn't like it when it came out though. But that's a great example of what I was saying earlier. People's opinions do change over time. Like I now have context with the Clone Wars show and all the lore, and my God, the community filling in all the blanks with like Metalurds and Geasley and Eckhart's Ladder, all doing their parts to like fill in the blanks of what does this mean, what does that mean, and I get hooked on it. But I will say about the community. Actually, go on.
If they didn't have a trilogy for the prequels and they just had one movie, and they made like Anakin and
Obi-Wan.
Obi-Wan. If they made them closer in age, where they were like war buddies and stuff, instead of like being more like disengaged and so forth, and if they focused more on like the drama and the war angle, the fall of the Jedi, maybe they made it like an hour longer, like some 3-hour sci-fi epic.
Yeah, no one would have sat down for that.
What?
You wouldn't have been able to convince Fox to do that. Like,
that would have been my kind of movie. That's I guess a Gene Morgan oriented.
That'd have been interesting to see, but I mean, these days, almost every angle of like the Clone War era is being addressed via other media. So I'm okay with it being shown there. In fact, I'm done with the Skywalker arc, all of it. I want to see like more of the KOTOR era, oh, and the in between the two. Like, show me a very young Yoda just starting his time in it, and show where the Republic was at that point. Because the Republic would have been at its peak. It wouldn't have been any better. It was all going downhill by the time the events of the prequel start. So why the fuck don't we see it when it's at its best, when it's at its strongest, when there is no Sith to challenge them, when there's no outside invasion from like the Infinite Empire from the fucking DLC.
Well, my thing
Not the
with
DLC, the multiplayer.
like Star Wars is like the original trilogy. You know, they didn't have all this lore planned, and it's
No,
like Star Wars never had the best writing.
Yeah, George had these vague ideas like Coruscant and shit like that, but he never, he
Well,
didn't, couldn't
if
have.
you're
Yeah,
writing any story,
yeah, like he probably just was like, oh, the planet, the capital world is Coruscant. Can we show it? It's a big city. Oh, that sounds too expensive. We'll just have the Emperor go onto the Death Star because we already have the Death Star set. You know, like, oh, what's Endor?
Yeah.
Endor is a big forest. Well, we could go to Pinewood and recreate it, or we could just go up the road outside of Sacramento and, like, film there. You know, like...
and it's also, you know, in the Mos Eisley bar, all those like Jim Henson kind of like
they
aliens.
rushed to find some of those motherfuckers. They were like sitting in closets. They had no lore, and now there are whole civilizations about them and shit. There was one that was
like,
a fucking giant rat.
Yeah,
it was just a fucking
like,
giant. But
you
now
look
there are
at
canon
the
species.
aliens that like the designs once they started to get into that like extended universe and stuff, and you compare them to like all the Jim Henson like Muppet aliens, and it's like, you know, damn, like you look at how they look compared to the other aliens.
Best example of the divide of that isn't the aliens, it's Princess Leia's wardrobe, right? Princess Leia, Carrie Fisher said, there are no bras. She was told there were no bras in the future. So she would have to tape her outfit onto, like her white robe, onto her boobs. And then when she was invited to see the premiere of the prequels, Queen Amidala looking like a fucking chess piece with this ornate outfit going on. And she just glares at George. And she's like, oh, really? So this is set, what, 20 years in the difference? I really
and
can't, it is interesting to see for every one thing that they had a vague idea for. The Kessel Run, the Spice Run of Kessel. It's just something that C-3PO throws away. It's something that like goes like, did you make the Kessel Run? It's just a place, but now you visit it numerous times in the series and the other movies.
I actually liked the Solo film. A lot of people hated it. I actually thought it was kind of decent.
I can't say I loved it. I liked certain elements of it, but I can't say I loved it.
Like popcorn flick. Same thing with Rogue One. If they just
I really liked Rogue One.
Yeah, if they just made a bunch of stand on their own, like they made it like an anthology film series. Here's this adventure of the year, like film. I don't think people would have any issues. It's the sequel trilogy. That was disappointing.
Yeah, that was just terrible.
But so were the prequels. I think the prequels and the sequels. Like people are trying to go back to the prequels and be like, yeah, they're actually. It's like, no, Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones were pretty bad. But Revenge of the Sith, I think, could have been a lot better. It was good, but there's definitely a really, really good movie in there somewhere. If they got some better acting, some better dialogue, and the acting outside the dialogue was actually pretty decent. Like there were scenes where there isn't any dialogue, and it's like Anakin looking out of the distance, contemplating the death of his wife, and that narrative of like he's having these visions, and he's willing to do whatever he can to save his loved one, and he's even willing to be corrupted by the dark side, like that kind of narrative, and then everything falls apart, and he ends up becoming the kind of dark element that results in the death of his love and so forth. And it causes this entire nation to break apart in the process. Like that is actually pretty kind of deep, poignant kind of narrative. And
Yeah,
if they
that's
just
the cycle. What does George always say? It's like poetry. It always rhymes. Like that's
yeah
why you see what goes on in the prequels, in the main, in the sequels. Though they fail to connect with the sequels, you get to see it in
if they
KOTOR.
got rid of the prequels, like they needed to make the like Doctor Zhivago, War and Peace, like Star Wars tragedy movie.
And well, they didn't do that, but they did fill in the war with the Clone Wars. And right now, I'm actually for that because it introduces us to a lot of characters that we didn't normally think about. Like I didn't like Ahsoka until really late in the Clone Wars show. I thought
I've
Ahsoka
never seen
was.
the show.
There's a lot of lore, a
She was in The
lot of character
Mandalorian,
development.
wasn't she?
Yep,
Yeah.
she's all grown up now. But I liked her by the end of that. What I wasn't expecting was to like the clones themselves. They all develop personalities, and they all have to deal with basically this looming dread of going to go crazy in a couple of years because they were never designed for long-term use. And what happens after we win? And they're all phased out with the stormtroopers. So you've got that, and then have you seen Andor yet?
I started watching it. The first, I got to go back and start watching it. I
Hell
watched
of
the
a good
first
one.
episode and then
You'll
yeah.
love the espionage segment with not Werner Herzog. What's his name? The old dude sounds like this. He,
Well, my thing is like in the first episode, like when he like commits the murder and stuff, it's like I think it would be very easy to find him. Like, wouldn't they have like cameras everywhere?
Well, yeah, but they're implying that the corporate sector is not very good at their job. I'm not going to spoil
Hmm.
it because if you're not that far into it, but it expands and it keeps on expanding. You even get to see like you'll recognize tons of like cameos and shit. Oh, did you watch the end of The Mandalorian?
I'm a few episodes in.
I then I can't ask what you thought of it. I
What's
thought the
that?
ending. I can't ask you what you thought of the ending of it then because
Yeah.
but I liked it. I didn't love it. I thought almost it was a bit rushed in a way, but there was some interesting elements to it. So um
But I also thought like Fall of the Jedi, they should have really delved into that more in
well they
Revenge of the
do in the
Sith.
Clone Wars.
They do.
They do. Oh
But
God,
isn't
yeah.
it like a cartoon? Isn't it kind
No,
of?
no, no. You take that attitude and you put it aside. Oh shit, we
Harmonious
just got
Realm
another dono.
are including the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters in this FF fund.
Yes, I am, Billy Boy Blue. Thank you so much for the $10 again. Are you including the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters? Yep. Number 1 to 6 is in a bundle for about 75. And I can get them all. And most of them I think are all remasters. So well, the ones that have been remastered have been remastered. I'm going to pick the remastered ones over the OG ones when available, but if it's only the OG one, then I'll pick up the OG one. Oddly enough, they've increased the prices of the OG ones, so you go and you buy the remasters. Fucking dicks.
Well,
Um,
how's the execution when it comes to the like Fall of the Jedi and the Clone Wars?
all right, so at the start of it, the Jedi are at the start of the show. The Jedi are not very good at leading troops. They're not built for that. But they're the only ones who can really do the job. They fall into the role, and then each one of them falls in to a varying degree. Sometimes too well. Obi-Wan is the golden boy. He's like the best general. He is good at everything. He is charming. He is great. He doesn't change. Anakin starts to get questioning, and then he starts to get darker. All the while, certain elements are pushing here and there. Ahsoka grows the fuck up. Other characters die off around about the near the end of the show. Certain characters you've seen in the background of the prequel movies start to die off to explain why you don't get to see them be killed off in Order 66. You get to learn the secrets of Cypher Diaz. You get to Dooku's character is massively increased, and so is Grievous.
Yeah, because I thought it would have been like really great in the movie if, like I said, if they gave us like
they expand on the Confederacy as well.
Yeah,
like why they're revolting.
They gave us like the kind of like 3-hour epic that we wanted. They could have developed a lot of the different Jedi and then started killing them off. You play like that kind of malaise kind of music as they're going in and rounding them up, and and it could have
a lot of the younglings die off that way. But then they also don't get killed off that way.
He's killing younglings.
Not even the younglings were spared.
See, they needed to fix the dialogue. Like I like the scene when he was
That works for him. He's a posh git. He talks like that.
Well, what about when Anakin's like in bed with Padme, and he's like, she's like, "Oh, because I'm so in love with you," and he's like, "No,
yeah, that's terrible.
I'm so in love with you."
Yeah, that is terrible. Anytime Hayden's character is on screen, and you know what, we gave him a bad rap. He's come back in for other things. He does other stuff. He's not a bad actor. He was given a shit dialogue script. Like, he was just told to work with...
But even
I don't like sand.
The original trilogy had really bad dialogue.
Well, of course. You can break it apart. You can break apart anything given enough time, especially as the decades go on. The original one... The original one, Luke, is so annoying. I wanted to go to Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
And then like Mark Hamill's performance, like in The Empire Strikes Back, when like Darth Vader gives the reveal and everything, and he's like, Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father, and he's like, yes, he did. He told me you killed him, and he's like, no, I'm your father, and he's like, what? But that's impossible.
That was Mark's actual reveal. No, sorry, it wasn't his reveal. Like, it was like.
He didn't even allow Mark Hamill to know. He wanted even him to be shocked.
Only I think James did, because he had to do the voice, so he had to read the line, and he was just told to like keep it to himself until the reveal. Which that's kind of clever in a time, but the time before phones and shit. You had to. I also, the Star Wars movies are great because when you look behind the scenes, it's like Lord of the Rings. When you look behind the scenes of the making of Lord of the Rings, there's a lot of really cool stuff going on there, and occasionally shit ones like the Union shit in The Hobbits. Again, Lindsay Ellis, great series on that. But you go back to like the Star Wars, the original Star Wars. The first one was just this plucky director, hot off one film that had enough that the studio might listen to him, and he's like, "I've got this
American
idea
Graffiti.
for great film in its own right."
What about THX like 1137?
I thought it was 1138.
138, whatever it is.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Very experimental for its time. Very cool. Very sad. Very kind of like 1984 in that regard. You can tell that they don't have the words anymore to express the feelings going through their minds. So like when he's just watching, like they just casually watch a black guy get like beat up by the police. It's on the TV. It's just something to pass the time. And like he's watching the or like the TV has well, it's not even a TV, it's like a hologram thing, just a picture of the two people naked dancing. You're not even meant to touch yourself, it's just there on screen. It's just meant to elicit certain like emotions, or their god is just a big screen and you just like, yes, I understand.
Apparently,
yes, okay.
Lucas went back to that movie and did similar things like what he did with the re-release of the original trilogy, where he added a bunch of crappy like CG.
Yeah.
And made a bunch of changes.
Oh God, do you remember South Park making fun of that? We really want. Yeah, the kids are just there at the bus stop, and you can just see like these Imperial walkers just moving around in the background. around. We really
I
wanted to
like
put Imperial Walkers and giant bantha lizards inside, but that was expensive and hard work.
I'm not a big fan of Family Guy, but I did like the Star Wars like
Oh,
trilogy
I
that had a lot of
loved
good
that.
jokes.
Yeah, it was great.
And I like it when they go in the Mos Eisley bar and they're like, "Wow, look at all these aliens." They're like, "There's even more in the special edition." And then it's a sock puppet, like, "Yeah, I let them in."
Bah, 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 I'm here too. Also, Roger's there in the background.
Oh,
I
and the like the what is it, Jabba's palace in the third movie where like they added this like CG musical number.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
Zabudu.
I actually kind of like that because I don't know, it was so
And
fucking bizarre.
they infused it with the unused footage of just like Baba just occasionally staring at things. Like, oh god, that was so bad. And you know what? She has a character. The singer has a character arc in the Clone Wars.
I think it would have been funny if they just did make any changes, and that was the only change they made, and they just put it in
This is
there.
what I
And they,
always wanted.
well, they didn't advertise it at all, and then people like go to the theater and they're like, Was this in the original movie? What?"
Oh god, I was really stoned in the 70s when this came out. I don't remember any of this.
I don't remember that. Like CG, what?
Oh god, that was so great. And you know what the worst part was? For a long while, they suppressed the original movies, and the unedited versions. And this was back before the internet could really like preserve things forever. So there was a genuine risk that people couldn't find the original films, and then eventually they're like, all right, fine, we'll also release the normal version. Like, fuck you, man. I know this
Well, it
is
was
your
the
baby, but at the same time, like, treat your baby better. You know?
well, what was it? Congress, like the Library of Congress, they wanted to include Star Wars,
Hmm.
and they said that they like George Lucas was only willing to provide them with the re-release, and they said no, like
It has to
we're
be the original.
and he's like, nah, so it wasn't included.
Yep. Probably after he dies, his estate
Well,
will probably
Disney
give
could
him.
probably
Yeah, I
provide them
was
with it
thinking
now.
that. Although we don't have Mango here, because as I learned on Three Drinks Minimum, she is the fucking mistress of all things copyright, and she'll be able to fill in real quick about all the little nuances there. I know George Lucas has a lot of final say. Ooh, I only learned recently when Dark Forces or Dark Sith was released, the game, he played it for the first time and he was shocked to find how violent it was. And for the longest time, he really didn't like the idea of having too much violence in a Star Wars game because he still thought it as it was geared towards kids. But then I think he played The Force Unleashed and he really loved being able to toss stormtroopers around. And he was like,
Hmm.
okay, yeah, maybe. But
I liked
he also has
what
the red Twi'lek girl from the Star Wars Online. That's his waifu.
hmm.
He just saw a picture of her and was like, "Oh wow, she's really nice."
Yeah, I'd say like when it came to games, I really like the Jedi Knight. Kind of like they were the FPS slash like third person Jedi
I
like
kind of
games,
remember them. Yeah.
and then I'd say it was the Knights of the Old Republic, the RPG, and that was
Oh, KOTOR one
by
and two are great.
yeah, that was by BioWare, and
Mm-hmm.
then for the GameCube and the N64, you had Rogue, like Rogue Squadron,
I
and
knew
I'd
it.
say the
Yeah.
second one was the best one out of all of those.
I remember playing Rogue Squadron. No, I remember playing a version of Rogue Squadron that was like on the N64. And it was you could unlock the you were in a hangar and you could actually like scan over each ship and it would give you a breakdown of the ship, and then eventually you could unlock the Millennium Falcon. I have on GOG the originals and the slightly better versions of the X-wing and TIE Fighter.
I've never played those.
They're kind of hard to control unless you have like a flight stick. But the lore in it is really cool. So rather than saving yourself actually playing them, go and watch like the cutscenes one day when you're bored on YouTube, because it actually has like a whole like
Well,
bunch of plots. Thrawn makes his first appearance there.
yeah, they kind of had like the original Fallout games. Like, didn't they have like similar types of animations, like with the like characters, like faces and stuff?
Well, they had the heads. No, these ones were like pixel art, and
Mm.
they don't move much. If you've ever seen, it was like a product of the time. You'd recognize it. Like a lot of some King's Quest games had stuff like that, and um, uh, oh god, I'm getting tired. I'm actually probably gonna have to wrap this up pretty soon. We'll go for the hour, so we got about what, another 20 odd minutes. I like the one where
Well,
you
I
make
went
the string
back.
across the legs of the ATST. Do you do that a lot? No, Quib. There's a lot of games where you do
Mm.
that. Um,
Yeah, like the Rogue Squadron games
hmm,
allowed you to do that. And then there was have you ever played the Dark Shadows for which is Star Wars game for the N64?
sounds familiar.
Yeah, you played as some like bounty hunter dude, and people really liked the game. I remember a lot of people owned it, but I went back and played it, and it's like it's got Resident Evil controls, and I
No.
yes, it
Tank controls.
see the end, like that was the awkward period between the like old and the new when it came to the game
Yeah, they were
industry.
still working shit out.
That was the puberty of the game industry. And you go back and play all these games that people love, and it's like GoldenEye, a lot of those like N64
Oh no, no,
shooters.
I will defend GoldenEye. I played it
Oh,
recently. I don't like the way you have to control the gun, like the control stick, but I still think it feels responsive and like impactful, and but you move so fast through the game. It does feel like you're floating a bit, but
but the
it
level
works.
design is kind of like I don't know. I could see why people would get really into it back when it was originally released, but now it seems like the kind of really basic rote, and it kind of did do a good job bringing like FPSs to consoles.
Yeah,
Um,
like that's like you gotta start somewhere, right?
yeah.
So
Well,
like,
I think it's like
I
a
mean,
lot of people do lists of like, hey, top 10 best games of all time, top 10 best films of all time, and so forth. But and I think sometimes like people kind of confuse innovative with, I guess, like best in quality, and I think
yeah, that's true. Like a lot of people will just think, "Hey, we did it first." Yeah, but doing it first does not necessarily mean doing it better or the best.
and
Um,
I definitely think it is one of the most like innovative FPS games. So if you even include it as number one, like top 10 most innovative like first person shooters, I'd agree. But I don't think
yeah,
it's aged that well, and
it
it
could be in the top 10 list, but something like Doom or Wolfenstein has to take number one, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
But I'd rather play like Call of Duty than GoldenEye. It's just I think people are putting on nostalgia goggles when they're gonna sit there and say that like in terms of like
Well, to be
basic
entirely honest with you,
mechanics.
man, you were spoilt by the more refined games that came afterwards because you are
Yeah.
younger. So it would be like if someone who, even if they were older, who'd never played games at all, and the first game they play is like the top, I don't know, like fucking Horizon Zero Dawn, right? And they're running around and they're like, oh, this is really good. This is now their first game, and now all other games will have to like compete with that. But then if you showed them a game from even a few years prior that had similar premise, um, they'd be like, "Oh, this isn't as good." Well, yeah, because you've been kind of spoiled on it. Like you've
Well, to
now
be
got.
fair, I did like the games that I grew up with. I'd say when I was in elementary school, it was the PS2, the GameCube. So that was the first current generation that was like going on when I was like old enough to really get into games. But it's like N64 and PlayStation 1 was still relevant when I was that age. So a bunch of people, like you could still buy them and rent
I was
them
gonna
and
say,
store
yeah,
it and
if you got
everything.
PS2, then you've got reverse compatibility with the PS1. You could even use
Yeah.
the memory cards, if I remember right. You could use the same memory cards.
But I
Um,
remember like they still had N64 games that you could rent at Blockbuster, and like a bunch of people still only had the N64 and didn't have the modern consoles yet, and it was still very common. So I played GoldenEye, and on the GameCube and PS2, I
oh
had like the
yeah.
Medal of Honor games, and you go back and play them now, and once more, they're pretty dated and
All right,
broken.
so I played Underground, Medal of Honor Underground, a lot, and I recently watched I think his name's Codwell. He's the guy who went across America trying to recreate the Fallout settings. He played all the Medal of Honor games, and looking at it, I'm like, yeah, you could see how like mechanics shifted and changed over the years. But in this case, I will say, hell, I'm currently doing a playthrough of Final Fantasy VII. It has one of the worst motherfucking inventory systems ever. It sucks. It fucking sucks. I hate it.
The
But you know what?
characters don't have fingers.
The characters don't have joints. They're just polygons locked together. The only time you ever see them is in like a few cutscenes. But I remember
And
when I was like a kid on my birthday, I got the big oh the big box set with all the CDs in it. And I played the living arse of that game, and I've got 8 and I've got 9, and they won't hold up compared to other games in some respects. But in others, still, they will. Story, for example. The story's timeless. Like Final Fantasy VII is like environmentalism. Final Fantasy VIII is Final Fantasy IX is kind of like Lovecraftian horror, but set in like Disney World. Like it's
I remember a lot of older games, like the characters like had no facial expressions and their mouths wouldn't move, like in
yeah,
the cutscenes. The
that's
Resident
right.
Evil games were like that, and
Yeah, their heads
Spider
just
Man,
bobbed.
yeah, the Spider-Man game for the N64, and then I played there was a sequel to that, like Inter Electro on the like PlayStation 1. They didn't even release it on the other console. And I actually like that more than the first one. But you go back and play that as well, and it's it's also pretty dated.
Well, the thing is, there's nothing wrong with the datedness if it holds up. But as the years go
Yeah.
on, will they hold up more and more? For generations who grew up with it, yeah. You know, they're going to look at the latest games coming out this year, 10 or 20 years down the line, and call them dated as fuck. They'll be products
Well,
of
I
their
think
time. They're going to be like, I can't believe they never thought of doing this. You know?
well, I think the games for like the Super Nintendo and like Genesis, I think that was where like the technology for like side scroller kind of games or top down like kind of games as well. Um, was strong enough where they could do whatever they needed with that kind of 2D gameplay. So I think a lot of those games like they age perfectly fine, even though I didn't grow up with them. It's like
Some. I know the
yeah,
history of like the how Super Mario was invented, and they made a lot of efforts to try to work around the limitations of the Game Boy and the Nintendo and shit, the arcade cabinets. But
well, the Game Boy Advance, I had they had all the Mario Brothers games, so I actually played those, and I was shocked because I thought they were for the Game Boy, and then like I went to a used game store and I played Donkey Kong Country on the GBA. I thought they were GBA games, and then I saw
mm,
that they were on like the Super Nintendo, and I'm like, whoa, they were actually released a lot earlier.
if I will say that like certain games of the time they could have been rehashed, like old games, I suppose, like old media and mediums. The first Sonic game was actually not very good at what it was meant to be doing, which was show how fast Sonic can run, how he can spin. There's too many stops. After Green Hills, which is one everyone thinks of, there's too many puzzles, there's too many water levels, there's too many like moments where you're incredibly fast and you stop. So the following games they learned from that, and then they added Sonic, they added Knuckles, they added the pinball mini game. Oh, that was addictive as fuck.
The only Sonic game I've ever played, and it was at somebody else's house, was the 2006 Sonic game for the 360.
Ooh.
And, yeah, not a very good game, and it's kind of weird because the beginning of the game it looks like something from like Final Fantasy, and then Sonic shows up, and it's like, what the fuck? And
Is
then,
that the one where he has like a human girlfriend?
yeah, and then you're in like a city, and it's like it's weird how like
Yeah,
the
it
game
looked like a
constantly-
Final Fantasy city.
No, it did. It looked like you were just in like average
JRPG.
sized metropolitan city, and like they're talking about dragons and stuff, but then the characters are wearing like khakis and a polo shirt. But then the cutscenes like earlier look like they're from a Final Fantasy game. It's just
Yeah, there's
like,
a bit of a
there's no-
divide. It's almost like the frontier in that regard. It's like too many ideas all tossed together. I thought that like the real question is like, do you enjoy these particular games? Like I play a lot of games that most people would consider to be really boring, and to the point where I wouldn't even stream them. Like if you thought that me playing fucking farming simulator or trucking simulator was boring, oh no, you guys will never see me play Hearts of Iron for like 12 hours straight.
What about Desert Bus?
I only know of Desert Bus. I've never played of Desert Bus.
Yeah, me too. It's Penn and Teller made it. It was a joke game, and
Oh
apparently
yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yes, I remember where like they're just constantly having arguments over like gas and shit.
Well, no. The game, all it is you control a bus, and it's like a windshield kind of view, and you just drive in one direction, and it's from I think Vegas to LA, and it's just straight road, like pretty much no scenery, nothing but desert on the side, and you're just pressing the gas and driving for it's like 8 hours each way, and you get a point every 8 hours you drive.
Yeah,
you-
but if I remember right, the it has like the occasional like cutscene, like isn't there like a little TV down the bottom, and Penn and Teller like pop in and they just I don't know what they say, but it's like they talk about I think they talk about like getting a flat
Teller
tire
doesn't say
once.
anything.
Oh yeah, well obviously yeah. Oh well, he doesn't speak. I didn't speak. Please don't. He'll kill me. I'm not the first Teller. Yeah, I remember that game. I know that game reminds me of those spelling games from school. Did you ever have them where the edutainment
yeah.
ones where it was like driving a car and you had to increase the speed by typing faster and faster, and that was
My school, when I was in elementary school, they had Mario Teaches Typing.
Oh hell yeah! Not Sonic Teaches Typing though, because that has.
I didn't even know there was a Sonic Teaches Typing
watch
game.
lazy game reviews on it, like this. I think it's called like Sonic Tainment or something like that, and it's a nightmare. It's like someone took acid and then watched the old 90s cartoon. Not the weird cyberpunk one either, but the original like Chili Dogs version. Yeah, it's and there's a scene where I think Dr. Eggman says like Sonic is gay, like as an insult, like you're just really gay. Wait, what? You know, like it's something really out of place.
What was it? Charles Manet, who voices Mario. Like his first gig voicing Mario wasn't even Mario 64. It was some crappy like PC Mario game where Mario would like play cards, or like what was it called? Mario Shuffle or Mario.
Yeah, he
Mario
was like
Roulette or something.
He was like pixel arts, and he only had like three or four hands of animation.
Yeah, you'd play Goldfish, and you'd be like,
That's
"Hey,
right.
Mario, like two cards, two aces." I can't do a good Mario.
Well, neither can it was Chris Pratt, wasn't it? Who did
Yeah.
yeah. I liked him. I liked him in that. He wasn't bad.
I haven't
Yeah,
seen it.
no, it's not
Apparently, if
terrible.
you, what's that?
It's not terrible. It's not great either, but it's exactly what you expect of it. It's a Super Mario movie. It'll kill a little like 90 minutes, you know.
Well, apparently the movie, somebody aired it on like
Yeah,
Twitter,
yeah,
and 9 million people saw it.
that's right. To
Nintendo's not happy.
make fun of Elon's blue checkmark law, they just fucking went to town. What are your top 2 games of 2023? I don't know. I don't think I played Dark Tide. That was pretty cool. I need to start streaming that again. That's a
I
funny.
haven't played any games from 2023.
I didn't like Atomic Heart. I watched Girly play Atomic Heart. The main character just won't shut the fuck up. Um, and it's badly translated from English, so it just nah. Didn't like Hogwarts Legacy either, because a lot of cool ideas were just thrown by the wayside, to turn into like a standard fetch quest. Plus, all the characters in it, they are aggressively dorky. They're like, ooh, I can't wait to show Professor I can do this, and like, you just want to grab them and give them all a collective swirly. Like they're just so unlikable. Um, I'm trying to think of another one that's out. I heard Redwall or Redfall was so bad that Xbox has sent an apology, like made an apology. Um, I don't know. Like I said, I'm getting really tired, so I'm probably just gonna wrap up here. Um, but yeah, look,
Finish.
I need to get back into gaming, which I am. Thanks to Billy Boy. I'll now look at. I'll either buy one for 20 or I'll buy like possibly 2 smaller ones, and then we'll start streaming them. I'll just go and see
I
what's
did get
on the
a new
list.
computer, so I'm thinking of doing some streams as well.
Top tier streams. You should play some multiplayer with Shabisky.
Yeah, he really wants me to play Fortnite. I really am not interested in that game, and I think he plays it too
Blame.
much.
I likes Fortnite. I played a little bit of it back when you could like it was all construction and shit, and I didn't like it. But I don't like really a lot of multiplayer games. The only reason I want to play Dark Tide with people is because it's 40k. So
And then, what is it? They want me to get a Timmy and Shab want me to get a Switch, and
yeah, a
I'd
lot
say
of good stuff
some
with Switch.
Mario Kart. I think that would be really fun to play.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Um,
And another Switch game, like I'd like to play the Zelda games.
Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, my favorite Zelda game is Majora's Mask.
Oh,
I don't know.
I love the looming dread of
Yeah,
go if you've got some time. I've been throwing out tons of suggestions tonight. Go and watch Matthew Matosis's video on Majora's Mask. He develops games from time to time himself, and he loves breaking down the little subtle things they do to just add dread. Like, did you notice every
The
Billy
body is
Boy?
round.
Um, thank you
Here's one
for
more for the FF Fund.
another
My
$10.
favorite game series. Keep up the good work, Lev, my man.
Well, thank you so much. With that, I should be able to pick up a few more. I've got a week's worth of games now, thanks to you, because I already had 7, 8, 9. Won't start 15 yet because our plate's already getting pretty full, and that's a chunky boy. But I could pick up. Ooh, I gotta now think about this. One more reason I want to wrap it up now. I have to actually look over the list and decide which ones I'll line up. Check out our Discord check out the Discord to see which ones I will do. Sorry to cut it short though. Like I am starting to get groggy, and I do have something to do tomorrow, so I should get some sleep when I can. But
can't say
yeah,
where I am, so I still have a good, I'd say 6 hours before I go to bed.
you got a show tonight.
Shad might pester me to come on. Outside of that, I stream every Saturday. Shab and I have a podcast called Pedantic Pedestrian Podcast, and we cover lots of really, really fun stories. And It's known for being one of the most upbeat podcasts in terms of material we cover.
You know what? I'll be honest. You guys really should have much longer episodes. I mean, you barely stream at all. Like I tune in and suddenly you're no longer streaming. It's not like you stream for like hours and hours and hours and hours and hours.
Yeah, we only streamed for 6 hours last time.
Only 6 hours. I mean, what are these people going to do besides like start dealing with their own internal monologues? They're trying to hide from that. That's the sole purpose we exist. But no, yeah, it's fun. I've been on it a few times. Usually the timing means I can't hang out for the whole time, but I enjoy my time when I'm there. But yeah, go and check him out, and he'll be here on Thursday for Bearded Ramblings.
Yeah.
We can talk about the news or look at some sausages. Or news.
Which
about
other
sausages.
are we going to have other guests on, or is it just going to be Gene Morgan?
It's just going to be Gene this week, but if you know someone you want to wrangle them on, bring them on as well. Ask around.
Maybe that Quib guy should come on.
If Quib wants to come on, you talk to him, and then boom.
He has that image from Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence.
Jesus, that's a reference.
What's that?
That's a bloody reference. I'm surprised many people know.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas.
My favorite Christmas movie.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that poignant note of loving one another, even during the time of war, I will say it has been a fun time. As always, I do enjoy these long jibber jabbers with guests. So if you guys, any of you, want to this time next month be well, not this time next month. It can be whatever day, but sometime next month. Want to have us to have our own coffee and chat? Do say so. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Check out Pedantic Pedestrians, and check out this Thursday for Bearded Ramblings.
Maybe Dirk could join us.
Ooh, well, drop him a link. But I gotta leg it, so